читаю на шовковім полі, я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою зі скидання, воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back today at 3:50 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, but this past 24 hours has to be the most exceptional of the war, as Russian losses have passed over 1,000 dead in 24 hours. The highest number we've seen over the course of the entire war, and probably the Russian army's most devastating 2 days in the entire conflict, including the day of Monday, which is not in the past 24 hours, that's in the past 48 hours. But moving on from that, we're going to get straight into the location unknowns tonight, because the Russian casualty counts are inside the location unknowns, and it is very important to cover those early on, along with the frontline movements that we've been seeing, to get a trend of what's happening and what will most likely be happening over the next few days and weeks. Starting off with the news inside of day 349, the only bit we got was that a Stugna hit a Mista SPG. So here's the clip. And we can see that Reddit is also telling us that the Super Bowl is here. Nice.
Все.
We can see them lining up the Stugna inside the house.
Зараз будемо працювати.
Yeah! Yeah!
It just clips from the Stugna in the house to the Stugna hitting the Mista, and the guy just going, yeah, in the middle of the field. So let's watch that one more time. So they're setting it up, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah! Yeah, сука!
I don't
Straight
know.
to the point.
Yeah, I
Show
don't-
the setup, and then show the results.
I don't know why that was so comical, but that was really nice to see. And also, they're using the Arabic export version of the Stugna called the Skiff, which never got exported, interestingly enough, because of the war, and they've all been used domestically. And we can see that that is the system that got the kill here. So pretty impressive and also pretty neat to see. Now, moving on from our only bit of location unknown news on day 349, we're now moving on into day 350, starting off with our first clip of a BMP-2 spontaneously combusting. BMP-2s have a thing with spontaneously combusting, because for some reason they're not really secured well. The Russians always leave hatches open on them whenever they're abandoned. They never try and close them back, so that way maybe in the future the vehicle could be recovered. So we see a Ukrainian soldier here about to grease this thing. You see them hovering the drone right over the driver's hatch, dropping the grenade inside, and the grenade here soon explodes, taking the engine bay hatch off with it, and causing a fire that will eventually burn out the BMP. Pretty wild to see. Also, I didn't expect that small of a grenade to have that kind of force to throw the engine bay hatch off. Like, let's watch that again. It goes flying off, and boom, the hatch goes flying at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and also the driver's hatch flew completely off of the vehicle as well. Pretty wild to see. And it's also nice to know that the BMP will be toasting quite nicely. Anyone want a BMP? Well done. That's a good question to ask. Matthew, throw up a poll. How do people like their BMPs? Well done, medium, medium rare, or rare? That would be an interesting question to ask. So with that, we're now moving on into our next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a massive battery of the improvised truck MLRSs that the Ukrainians have been seen using here and there, and now they're using them in entire batteries. So here's a clip. That's rather short. That's weird. It's like it didn't pick up the MLRS audio. Like, you hear the guys talking and stuff right beforehand, and then when they fire, it's like the whole world just goes silent. I think it may have broken the microphone. But
It's a new silent weapons.
it's the truck MLRSs with the silencers attached. Oh man, but anyways, that's the end of that clip right there. Really neat to see that they're using these improvised truck MLRSs all over the place, and not only that, they have so many of them that they're now using them in batteries like normal MLRSs. These are made and used because the Ukrainians do not have enough MLRSs or the ability to produce MLRSs where they could get grads everywhere and anywhere they wanted, or Uragans, so they started to take some of their unused grads that are inside of storage and take their launchers and then start equipping them onto the back of normal pickup trucks in smaller numbers of launching tubes, so that way they could get in theory, as many MLRSs out on the line as possible, and enough artillery support that they'd be able to fare, I guess you could say, the weather fairly good. And it looks like they've got so many of these, they're able to stack them up now. We're now moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we also saw this cool picture of a Panzerhaubitze 2000 on a fire mission. You can even see the rocket-assisted shell up there making its way from the Panzerhaubitze and on its way to glory, and you can also see the recoil, the muzzle brake, pushing a lot of the gases out to the sides, and you can also see this Ukrainian closing his ears because this thing's pretty loud, and if you're close to it and you don't have your ears covered, your ears can get blown out by this thing, and that is not a good day at all. So, pretty neat video to see, and well, pretty neat picture to see, and also it's great to know that the Germans provided these things and that the Ukrainians have been using them incredibly well. Speaking of the Germans providing neat stuff, we actually got to take a look at some of the Leopard 2s in Germany that will be sent to Ukraine in a few weeks' time, and the Germans actually made a demonstration with these tanks today on the field before they even arrive, and these apparently are the exact same Leopard 2 A6s that will arrive inside of Ukraine soon. And I wanted to show you all this because I thought it was a really neat demonstration.
Den Sie am heutigen Tag sehen werden, ein Kampfpanzer ist, der mit an Sicherheit grenzender Wahrscheinlichkeit in den nächsten Wochen in der Ukraine im Einsatz ist.
We can now see the future Ukrainian Leopard 2s being demonstrated out on the field. Okay, that was kind of scary. I thought they were going to run over the cameraman.
The cameraman never dies. He's good.
Also, I like how the commander just popped out of the turret for a second, saluted the crowd, and then went right back in. Watch. Boop. Hello. And then he gets back in. He's like, check this thing out, y'all. We can now see them rotating the turret. You see turret rotation speeds pretty fast. It also appears, and I don't want to say this with certainty, it seems as though it's either picking up the light from the camera inside of the barrel, or the breech is open during this demonstration, because there is light coming through the barrel somehow, some way. I think it's because it's inside the crew compartment and the light's going through the breech, but I don't really know, but that's still interesting to look at. We can now see it backing up, and you can see that the reverse gears have to be quite numerous on the Leopard 2, because this thing can travel quickly. We can now see them racing across an open field, much like they'd find in Ukraine. And I don't know if those are simulated cannon fires or what. We can now see them firing smoke grenades. And you can see that the smoke grenades are giving a very effective field of cover, well, more like concealment to these Leopard 2s. Something that, while great, we haven't seen used much in the Ukraine war, although most Soviet-era main battle tanks also have smoke grenade dischargers. We now see them reversing out of the area.
What? Reverse?
Yeah.
Damn.
They move that quickly in reverse.
I thought they were going forward.
No, they're reversing the entire time.
Do they have like a camera view of the rear in the tank?
I don't know. That's a great question. We would have to figure that out by asking a Leopard 2 tanker. We now see one pulling up by the camera, almost splashing them with the muddy water. And we can also see that they haven't painted over the German crosses yet on these tanks. Now you see the crew standing by the Leopard 2 for a photo op. Also, great question from the chat. Someone asked, let's see here. Andrew asked, can they see through the smoke? No, they can't, and usually Russian tanks or any tanks with infrared sights cannot see through the smoke because the smoke actually has a heat signature, so it just appears as a bright white light because it's actually a little warm. It is white phosphorus, after all, that they're shooting out of those smoke grenades, so it burns pretty hot. We now see them posing the Leopard 2s inside of the hangar for a photo op, and then sitting one outside just because they look extra cool. That's the end of the video, but I had to hop over here real quick because that was something very interesting to talk about with the German support, like the Panzerhaubitze 2000s, is seeing those German Leopard 2A6s that will be in Ukraine in a matter of weeks. Right now, they say that the window to deliver them will be sometime in late March, but from what we can tell by that German instructor, and he said a few weeks, which means about 3 to 4 weeks, so we may see these things in Ukraine by early March, or maybe even a little bit earlier than that, but we can't really tell for certain, because those windows of delivery are usually not accurate. The late windows usually mean that they'll be delivered well before then. So we're now going to be moving on out of Germany and back into our location unknowns as we meander our way to the Russian losses. Moving on to our next clip, where we also saw an unaccounted for Su-35 that had been destroyed at some point in the war. You can see the engines of the Su-35S still sitting in this field, and you can see that the Ukrainians took some pictures of it, and it looks like they're stamped to have been taken today. We don't know the location of this wreck, but we do know that it is somewhere in Ukraine, and apparently they don't know if it was accounted for or unaccounted for earlier in the war. Now, on our end, we don't know if it has been accounted for either. We've seen several Su-35s get shot down over the course of this war, but we have not seen this one in particular. We've seen 2 others, though, pancake in the exact same way when they crashed, meaning that the bottom of the fuselage slammed into the ground and the wreck was largely intact like this, but we don't know if there was a third Su-35 that had never been accounted for or had pictures taken of it that it also crashed. So this is kind of up in the air whether this is a new Su-35 kill or not. That was never recorded, but fairly interesting to see, and neat to know that one wreck had been discovered. We're now moving on from that bit of location unknown news and on to the next one right before we get to the casualty report, where we can see an MT-12 Rapira gun hitting the Russians. So let's watch this clip. Of course, absolutely sick intro.
Make that shit go boom.
I think we're going to have to mute the music now. We can see the Rapira firing and the shells coming in. We can see a Russian moving right there. Ooh, oh, hole in one. I don't even know how in the world they lined that shot up that well, but look at that. Guy goes running in, and it's a goal. Goodness, that was crazy. I don't even know how in the world they could have aimed the Rapira that accurately. I guess that may have been luck in a way. We can now see them hitting a building further down the street. Now you see a fire is broken out on one of the houses as the Rapira continues to fire in this direction. Those rounds are coming in very slow-like. But with that, that's the end of the clip. And interesting to see that that Rapira was able to land a direct hit to a Russian soldier. And that must have been something that reoccurred a lot today, because we saw that kind of story apparently repeat itself heavily in the casualty report, because now it's time for us to get on into the Russian losses for just the past 24 hours. And they are incredibly high. Unbelievably high. 1,030 Russian soldiers have been killed over the past 24 hours alone, bringing the number of total Russian dead to 133,190. Incredibly high. Unbelievably high. And it's crazy to think that we are approaching the last days of the first year of the war. We only have 15 days left in this remainder of the year since the war started, and we're seeing that the Russian death toll is reaching almost 150,000 before that point. I would be very certain that we'll see that the death rate for the Russian forces will have reached 150,000 by February 24th. It may even be higher than that. Not only that, but they lost a staggering amount of armored personnel carriers over the past 24 hours, a grand total of 28 of them, meaning that an entire battalion tacticals group worth of armored personnel carriers has been completely obliterated over the past 24 hours. An exceptionally low amount of supply vehicles were destroyed, however, with only 3 meeting their gruesome demise in the fields of Ukraine. 14 main battle tanks were destroyed. This is an exorbitantly high number. Even during the earlier phases of the war, in the opening months where the losses were the greatest, 14 tanks lost in a 24-hour span was quite high. And it appears that the Russians have lost 14 here. And we know where all of these armored personnel carriers and tanks were lost. Believe it or not, they weren't lost around Bakhmut. They were lost around Vuhledar, which is a battle that's hardly even going on, at least in the large picture of things, has no strategic value whatsoever. Yet the Russians have lost, and we'll get to the news here in a little bit about Vuhledar, dozens of armored personnel carriers and at least over a dozen tanks in that area over 24 hours. It is unbelievable. We don't even know why the command down there is that incompetent. We're used to a certain level of extreme incompetence in the Russian armed forces, but when we get to the picture and video footage here a little later in stream of the Battle of Vuhledar and the losses that the Russians have taken in armor down there, it is absolutely staggering. We are watching entire convoys of armored personnel carriers and tanks get destroyed on a single road multiple times over from top to bottom, from the first lead tank in the convoy to the last one at the end of the line. And so that's where most of those losses came from. We also saw another artillery piece get destroyed today. No drones, no MLRSs, no aircraft, helicopters, cruise missiles, or anti-aircraft vehicles were destroyed. But to Matthew's great delight, 5 Bobcat skid steers.
Is that 5 Bobcats in one day?
It is 5 of them. Matthew over there is tapping his fingers together, like the little finger gun things. He's tapping them together and going, "East for me." It's 5 Bobcat skid steers.
5 Bobcats.
Completely destroyed.
What's that guy on Andy Griffith who said, a 2-chair?
Floyd. Two chairs.
That's what I'm trying to imitate.
Oh, Andy, 2 chairs. But yeah, 5 Bobcat skid steers destroyed over 24 hours. That's an incredibly high number. We haven't seen a number like that ever. I don't even know where in the world they were destroying these special equipment vehicles. And of course, we always say on this channel that they're Bobcat skid steers. That isn't always the case, obviously. There's a lot of other special equipment vehicles that are involved in Russia's war. There's bulldozers, excavators, tank recovery vehicles. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So that's all in under the umbrella of a special equipment vehicle. So yeah, they're not all Bobcat skid steers, but I'm sure there's one out there that was destroyed in this 5 total, because there's gotta be. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. This is actually crazy. And believe it or not, for this 1,030 Russian troops dead, we have seen very little in terms of actual advances over the past 48 hours, not to mention the 24 hours where those losses occurred. So let me guide y'all through this, because most of the tank losses occurred near Vuhledar. So let's go down here, and let's go over the past 48 hours, and look at that, no movement at all. They have not moved any closer to Vuhledar than they were at the beginning of 48 hours, yet, as we'll see, they took a massive amount of tank and armored losses down here, and probably a decent amount of infantry losses accompanying that as well. However, I will say that they did make ground in the Bakhmut area that is quite concerning. As you can see, today, Krasna Hora is actually enveloped in something of an encirclement. It is about to be enveloped into a complete encirclement, and according to Deep State UA, Ukrainian forces have already moved out of the area of Krasna Hora and appear to be making a defensive line on the M03, which is only intuitive. That's the next place that the Ukrainians would go, and it appears that the Russians may have finally been able to create a battlefield that will be traveling down the entire length, at least as far as Bakhmut is concerned, of the M03 highway, meaning that that supply line is practically cut off. We're also seeing something similar occur in the south. It appears that the Ukrainians are now beginning to create a defensive line on the highway T0504, which means that that supply line may also be nearly out of action, if not out of action already, and that signals that tough times may be ahead for Bakhmut itself. If the Ukrainians try to hold it, they most likely will be able to, trying to inflict as many losses on Russian forces as possible, but at this point, it appears that a withdrawal to the ridgelines behind Bakhmut will become inevitable at this point. That does not mean, however, that the battle is completely lost. If they move back to the ridgelines behind Bakhmut, once again, that's the second firing line, and as said before, the Russians can take practically the entire town of Bakhmut, and eventually, through heavy withering fire from the ridges behind the town, the Ukrainians could try and hold them there, or maybe even counterattack in the area, trying to push the Russians out of Bakhmut. However, that's not a certainty either. The Ukrainians may decide to withdraw from those ridgelines as well, trying to find more suitable defensive grounds and positions further behind the city and allow the entire area to be taken by the Russians. And this does sound somewhat sad, or somewhat like a defeat. But one has to remember that a defeat is not always measured in losses received and ground taken. It's more so of a combination of the two, the amount of ground taken for the amount of losses taken. And we can see that by a Russian metric, or any standard world metric, losing tens of thousands of soldiers killed and tens of thousands more wounded for just one town with a population of 70,000 people is by no means a decisive victory, or a strategic victory for that matter. That is, on both levels, a strategic, I guess you could say, Pyrrhic victory and a tactical defeat, considering that the Russians took the entirety of the war to take Bakhmut, and that their entire activity, their entire army, combined arms, are directed entirely at this one town to try and take it over the course of the Second Battle of Bakhmut, sometime in between late October all the way up until mid to late February. That is, let me count that out: October, November, December, January, February. So that's about 5 months total, 5 to 6 months total, and that this battle has raged on. Tens of thousands dead. Well, over 10,000 dead, at least getting close to 15,000 dead just in this battle alone. Somewhere around 30 to 45,000 wounded to take a town with 75,000 people. That means that the Russians, in terms of manpower, have expended a 1-to-1 ratio for every single person living in Bakhmut. A Russian soldier has been put out of this war, either by being killed or being wounded. That is by no means a winning battle. That is a Pyrrhic victory of any, both on the strategic and tactical level. The Russians will most likely be exhausted if they do take Bakhmut. We already know that their forces are entering some kind of operational exhaustion, and once they do take the town, much like we saw in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, they will most likely declare some kind of a rest or a break, and all offensive actions in that area will practically cease. Not only that, but this appears to have been a larger plan involving an encirclement of Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, because it seems that all Russian efforts right now are focused and based on trying to take the remainder of the Donetsk Oblast that is in Ukrainian control, that they were not able to get in 2014 during the Donetsk and Luhansk uprisings. So considering that they don't even control Liman or Izium, which would have been incredibly crucial to that offensive strategy, taking Bakhmut, even in a larger picture, has no offensive value. Not only that, Bakhmut is extended well beyond any other part of their front lines in any other direction, meaning that now they have to defend a massive bulge in their lines protruding inwards to the Ukrainian lines, which leads them to a very vulnerable position, especially if their forces are exhausted beyond measure and will require rest and replenishments after this battle concludes. So we'll be waiting to see how this unfolds. There's several ways that this may unfold. It really all is in the Ukrainians' court of how do they react to the current situation and what they'll be doing over the next few days. But this is where most of the losses have been taken by the Russians over 24 hours, is taking this small hook here and taking no ground at all in the Vuhledar area. And so now that we've dissected all of the losses that the Russians have taken and everything that is going to the Russians' disadvantage, and also the what appears to be unfortunate loss of the core of Bakhmut itself and the withdrawal of the Ukrainians to further defensive lines behind the city, we're now going to be moving out of the location unknowns and on into our international news for a quick second, because in Lithuania, we actually saw the group of people who have been making these improvised stoves for the Ukrainian citizenry who finds themselves in precarious places on the front line, like many of the people who have been living in Bakhmut during both the First and the Second Battle of Bakhmut. And so let's see how they're being made in Lithuania.
Один друг говорит, вот есть такие люди, которые из старых дисков автомобильных колес делают печки. Говорит, что в Вильнюсе нужно место, где они могут свести. Это все, а потом отправить в Щеулей. И я зацепился, я думаю, вот, это мое. Похоже на то, что я делал, это вот химия была.
I mean, they got a factory going on in this workshop.
Very productive, it seems.
Oh yeah, super productive.
И, может, хочешь присоединиться со своими помещениями, со своими знаниями, со своим оборудованием. просто собираются люди, которые тоже не за деньги, которые работают где-то на своих работах, которые собираются после своих работ и свое свободное время посвящают этому делу.
He just said, this is the funny thing to me with this video. Where the hell's my mouse? I can't see it. One second, let me get it back over here. So what's funny to me is that he said these guys are showing up in their free time, but to me it almost looks like a Victorian era factory with how many people are in there working. Like, I don't know how many people they have involved in this project, but it's got to be a lot, and they've got to be working overtime, especially all of their current day jobs, because they are going to town in here.
Yeah, if this is what they do in their free time, I wonder what their main jobs are like.
They're literally supporting the entire Lithuanian economy on these 12 guys.
Размеры 15, 14 и 13. И сейчас ищем 16. Потому что это тогда получается большие печки. У нас они делаются как елка, ложится 16, тогда 14. И тогда, например, 13, и тут красиво сваривается. Очень мало сварки, как елочка. Потом наступила война, где ты смотришь, что тебе стыдно, если ты помытый, сытый, и еще у тебя денег есть. Как-то стыдно перед теми людьми, которые бегут в твою страну от войны. Вот. Огонь, теплота, уют – это и есть результат нашей работы. С первого взгляда не кажется, что эта печка сделана.
Holy moly, this thing is actually really nice. It looks
really
like,
nice.
Yeah, it looks like a normal, like, wood-burning stove that you would find in an old house.
Колесных дисков, да? Уже как бы, ну не знаю, такую...
That is crazy. I didn't expect that.
Покрасить красиво, так можно уже в любой комнате такую иметь.
Yeah, it really could go in any room.
Yeah, it could.
It's like a piece of art.
This guy needs to import these to the United States. I'd buy one.
Она шкафчик, и в нее можно загрузить разных вещей. Ну, там кофе, шоколады, аптечка, матрас какой-нибудь, там одежда теплая, ботинки. Ну, чтобы человек не только печку получил, но и еще что-то, что на этой печке можно сделать. Ну, там консервы, чай, кофе, что-то заварить, закипеть.
I'm really interested in this. I've stopped talking because I'm just sitting here looking at like how they're doing this. And I'm gonna real quick, Mandy, we're gonna have to take a side note here about the Lithuanians because I can't believe I was really blown away with the quality of that stove. Like, it made out of tire rims. That thing looks like something you would buy here in America for $500 to $600. So real quick, let's pull up the GDP of Lithuania because I've got to figure out how quickly has their economy grown over like the past 30 years. They don't have a chart for that? GDP of Lithuania growth. Let's see the growth chart. So per year, it appears that it grows on average, except for 2009, which was the economic recession worldwide. It appears that their economy grows anywhere in between 3% to 6% on average over the past decade, which is actually quite good. That's a fairly good economic growth. If we put in the United States, let's see how fast our economy is growing compared to theirs. So ours is actually growing over the last decade at a smaller percentage than the Lithuanian economy is. And I gotta say, there is definitely a reason why. These guys, even in their free time doing charity work, are incredibly industrious, hard-working people. I mean, I can't believe the quality of the stoves that were coming out of this pretty much tire workshop, and that they're sending all of these for free with aid packed into every stove to Ukraine. Absolutely unbelievable. A huge credit to the Lithuanians. And while this is a small effort, it really shows the Lithuanian spirit and belief in their Eastern European friends and allies like the Ukrainians and their never-ending support to them. So I've got to give them a massive load of credit. I was really blown away with that stove. And also, Mycroft, it says, I'm Lithuanian. Be proud of it, man, because those Lithuanians can make a freaking fine stove. I'll tell you that. So with that, We're
And
now
also, I see some people asking, where can you get it? I don't think you can get it because it's going to Ukraine, but that would be pretty neat if they sold those like on the side.
Yeah, and also to answer that, they're not sold. That's the thing. They're making all of those to that quality absolutely free of charge, and they're sending them all to the Ukrainians, and they're not selling them anywhere else. So I don't even know how they're really funding that operation, but absolutely insane nonetheless, and really neat to see from the Lithuanians. Now, just to make sure we have no other international news, and we don't, we're now going to be moving on even further into Ukraine and to our frontline news, which has been quite equally spread out across the entirety of the country. We got a fair bit of news all the way from the northern parts of the front line near Svatove and all the way south to Kherson. So before we get into this news, because this is going to be quite an extensive analysis of the front lines today, what's been going on, and we may even go through the supply situation and I guess you could say training situation of the Russians today, considering that seems to be coming to the forefront now with these monumental losses. We're going to go over the polls so that way we can have a strict split in between our location unknown news, the shocking amount of Russian losses, and then the frontline analysis as to why that happened. So let's go through the polls, because y'all have voted a lot on them tonight, and I would like to see what y'all are thinking. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so up first, we have 3 polls to go over, and the very first one was at the request of the enforcer, which said, how do you like your BMPs? It looks like 68% said well done, 10% said only done, 13% said medium rare, and 9% said rare. So I have to say, I like a well done BMP. I like it nice and charbroiled with a little bit of smoke off the top. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be honest with you, Matthew. I really like my BMPs rare. That sounds kind of weird. And a lot of y'all are probably like, why do you like your BMPs rare, Enforcer? Well, the reason why I like mine rare is because I like them to be seared. There's a lot of flavor in a non-overcooked BMP. And not only that, a non-cooked BMP is usually got a little bit of a beating heart in it still. And you can go and take it and raise it as your own and start using it against the other BMPs. So I would say, in my opinion, rare. I would have mine rare, so that way the Ukrainians can take them and reuse them directly against the Russians, free of charge, and of course thanking the Russians for their Lend-Lease. Also, by the way, just because people are going, ew, I don't actually eat my steaks in real life rare. I eat them at least medium well done, or a little bit higher up than that. Because while I do enjoy the flavor of a not completely burnt steak that's like well done, I still eat them. I can't have them.
It's honestly, go ahead.
I can't have them like really like juicy. Like there's no blood in a steak. That's like some kind of a juice or something that's inside of it at that point that isn't actually blood. But I still don't like eating it like that because it's just kind of weird. But anyways, what were you about to say, Matthew?
I was about to say it's a little bit of a health hazard not to like cook your BMPs well done, because if they're rare, they can still fire, and that could be dangerous. So I would cook it well done to be on the safe side.
Well,
get it to at least 175 degrees to be safe.
You know what? I'll agree with you, Matthew. At least 175 degrees, but even then, well, no, it couldn't be. You're right. Maybe, okay, I'll change my mind. I'll revoke my past decision about rare. I will say medium. I'll do medium. So with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well. A really weird one, but with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our second poll says a Ukrainian official, Alexei Danilov, hinted at striking Russia on its own territory. And what are your thoughts on that? It looks like 59% said Ukraine is planning something big, 15% said unsure, 15% said it's likely only a scare tactic, and 11% said Ukraine will not hit the Russian mainland. And I'm going to have to err on the third option, which is likely a scare tactic, because I think that Ukraine knows they would escalate the war in very, very, very fast fashion, and I don't think they want that. Ukraine is holding their own, but there's no need to escalate it to that point, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
And what was that in the context of? An actual military incursion into Russia or missile attacks?
It's unclear at this point.
I think what he means by that, because there already is a precedent for missile attacks from the Ukrainians reaching deep inside of Russia and striking targets as far in as Saratov and Ryazan. If he was talking in that context, I would say that it is completely serious, and they're probably going to do something like that in the future, because we have no reason to not believe that the Ukrainians lack an ability to already strike at, I guess you could say, strategic targets deep inside of the Russian Federation. If he's talking about a military incursion into Russia, I feel like that's most likely fear talk, because the Ukrainians would not want to do that. That would freak out the Russian public. They would probably see that the units that they have on the Ukrainian border in most areas are lightly armed, almost light infantry, or less than light infantry, almost like armed citizenry on the border, and the Ukrainians could probably easily make it to Belgrade. And then that would cause a lot of panic, because if they take a city like Belgrade or Kursk, the Russian public is going to freak out. Also, not even to mention this, Kursk is a sacred place in the Russian psyche due to the Battle of Kursk in the Second World War. Much like Volgograd, it's viewed as one of those defining moments where hundreds of thousands of Russians died and they protected their whatever they're going to say nowadays. So if the Ukrainians took a city like Kursk, the Russians would go absolutely ape on them, because they would have to turn the situation around somehow. We may even see it start getting into very precarious circumstances then, like nuclear war. So I would say the Ukrainians probably wouldn't do that, because all their goal is to win the defensive war. They're not trying to conduct a total war or get an unconditional surrender from the Russians, because they are the defending party in this war, not the offensive party like the Russians. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, because if it's missiles, probably very serious. If he's talking about a military incursion with soldiers into Russia, probably not serious, probably just fear-mongering. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have the third one and the final one, which says, does the likely loss of Bakhmut make you concerned for Ukraine? It looks like 43% said no, it's not a big deal to me. 21% said I'm in between. 27% said yes, it does make me concerned. And 8% said unsure. Now, I have to admit, it would be a little naive to say it's not a little concerning, although we can kind of be comforted by the fact it's really not strategic, like we've been saying all along. But I am slightly concerned, so I will say in between and go with the 21%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's not that concerning at all to me on a size scale, strategic scale, or any scale, because we've seen the Russians take Melitopol, Berdyansk, Mariupol, Kherson. We've also seen them take Konotop. They surrounded Sumy. They actually besieged Kharkiv for nearly 2 days before the siege was broken. We've seen them take Lysychansk. And also Severodonetsk, combined with a combined population of 250,000. We've seen them take Izium. We've seen them take Liman, Balaklia, and almost all of those towns, save Balaklia as well as Liman, had populations that were larger than Bakhmut, and also at that time had more strategic pertinence than Bakhmut ever did. And the capture and holding or occupation of those towns over the entire war did nothing to improve Russia's actual condition in the war. And eventually, they would either lose cities like Izium, as well as Balaklia and Kherson to Ukrainian counterattacks that they were now able to defend against, and they also didn't allow for further planning or offensive operations deeper into the Ukrainian heartland. So I would say it's not going to be that big of a deal, especially seeing that this front line, as it stands, the only direction they could go is in a straight line to Slovyansk down the M03, or further down to Konstantinivka south of Bakhmut, and then north on that highway towards Kramatorsk. And as we know, full head-on assaults into a city are not the way to go. You want to try and snake your way around the outsides to create something of an encirclement, and then force the enemy force's hand to withdraw from a town. Both the Ukrainians and the Russians have done that over the course of the war, so the idea of the Russians just blasting their way straight down a highway, knowing that they can hardly conduct an encirclement of Bakhmut, would be incredibly unlikely. And for that reason, I don't really consider the loss of Bakhmut to be of that much importance or pertinence, although it will definitely serve to be one of Russia's few propaganda victories an entire year into the war, especially considering that they lost Kherson. And what's funny, Matthew, is that they lost Kherson, and the Russians said, that's no big deal. You know, it was just a city of 200-something thousand people. It's not like that's going to come back to bite us. But when they do take Bakhmut, probably in the next week or two, they'll be sitting there and going, this is the biggest victory of the war. We can't win anything bigger than this. The whole world is our oyster now, and we can march all the way to Berlin. I'm sure they're going to be saying that about Bakhmut, although they've lost cities far larger and far more important than Bakhmut in context.
Yeah, they need to like follow up with saying that propaganda piece right there by saying, and we still have like, let's see, 75% of the country to go.
Well, more than that, it's more like 80% now. I mean, like the Ukrainians have taken back enough territory that they've like flipped it around to 80%. So they only have 1 in 5 of the square miles they need to take the entirety of Ukraine, and that's a long shot from winning. And so
They took 1 grain of salt out of the pile, and there's still a whole pile left. It's like, rather than propaganda, it's really meaningless in reality.
yeah, it really is, and that's why I don't really put a lot of weight into Bakhmut. And so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And once again, that's just my opinion. If you think that Bakhmut's incredibly important and it's a concern to be lost, that is an equally good point, because it really just matters on your perspective and what you're looking at is important that makes Bakhmut an incredibly important target or an incredibly irrelevant one. So with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next poll. If we have one, we've already run over 3, so if we have a 4th one, that'd be wild. And if not, we're moving into the question segment.
All right, so we are moving into our super chat questions, and up first, we have that $60 donation from Duncan VR, who of course has the animal noises in the super chat.
You know you had
so
to.
if you hear animal noises, it is reading off a super chat. Because some people go berserk every time we do this, saying so immature, but it's just a super chat. So Duncan says, "Bamuba, I've been here since day 4. Putin took a ride in a new Ruski spy balloon. Baba meow. He tried to fly over Alabama. Moo woof. Matthew got in his Su-27 jet. Baba. He took 1 shot and blew Putler's pants to shreds. Meow. For the Igor fun. Juga juga."
And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. Also, the $69, well, the 69 Australian dollar super chat. Nice. Matthew, hit it. Nice.
Nice.
Nice. But also, thank you so much once again for the support. And also, thank you for the super chat that I never really know how to react to, because you always send them in, and I don't know how I'm supposed to react to it. Like, it's funny, I will tell you that, but I don't know how to add anything to it. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. Also, being an old guard in the Lee Spring Army, being here since day 4 is unbelievable to really think about. And thinking that we're on day 350, we are only 15 days away, a little over 2 weeks, from the 365th day of the war, an entire year of the war. And so thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for hanging out here and being with us the entire time, so that way when we reach it to the year, well, when we reach the year's anniversary, we'll all be here to cover it. Now also, we've been alluding to this in the background a little bit. Something special will be going on the year anniversary of this war, and here soon there will be an announcement made on our channel, probably within the next several days, about what that really is and what's coming up. And also, all of the YouTube channels that will be involved in the special 365th Day of the War special will be making announcements as well. So make sure to keep an eye out for them. And you may see some YouTubers out there that you'll be really surprised to see on our channel. We're all going to be coming together that day on a Friday to run a fundraiser. And I'll tell you all this right now until we make the official announcement about everything involved. They'll all be involved in helping us with a fundraiser, and that fundraiser has already been, I guess you could say, decided to be Doctors Without Borders, again, because we are incredibly huge fans of Doctors Without Borders and all the work that they've been doing inside of Ukraine. So this thing is going to be absolutely huge, believe me. So make sure to be ready for the 365th day of the war, because we are going to try and break fundraising records on this channel. We're going to try and do everything that y'all may have never seen before that this channel has done. Well, never done, actually. So with that, I'm going to leave y'all with that in mind, but thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan VR, and also Bamuba. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Justice Ryan, who says, "Enforcer and Matt, greetings. It's good to hear, even with the deadly earthquake in Turkey, they're going to release half of their Leopard tanks to Ukraine, and I'm glad to hear the world is sending earthquake aid to Turkey."
Real quick, I actually have not heard that. Turkey tank news. Let me type that in, because I didn't hear that they were giving half of their tanks. I don't see any news on that. It looks like they've made a deal with Altai, to produce, let's see, South Korean transmissions for their Altai tanks. So, unfortunately, I cannot find the news about Turkey sending half of their tanks. If I can find it, though, I'll make sure to report on it. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping out this channel, because it's great to know that people do enjoy this channel and help it to keep running. And also, I would like to thank you so much for having some best wishes out for the Turks. The Turks are an interesting country, and as I've tried to understand them a little bit more and study them after this show runs, I've started to understand that Turkey is in a weird position in the modern day and somewhat misunderstood by a lot of us here in the United States and around the rest of Europe as to why they do weird Turkey things. And if you go through multiple hours of trying to read and watch documentaries about how Turkey came to be what it is today, you'll kind of get why they're so weird of a country and why they just do things that don't really help anyone. But anyways, moving on from that, thank you so much for the support. It is great to know that the Turks have been constantly supporting the Ukrainians, both through their military support, such as the Bayraktars and the Baykar Company in general, and also everything else that the Turks have provided, like the power-generating ships that have eventually made their way to Ukraine and have been helping out their ailing power infrastructure that's been heavily hit by the war. And so, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for bringing up the Turks, because they also went through a devastating earthquake here in the town of Gaziantep, and they are getting a load of international support to try and help out that town that is somewhat in the far-flung reaches of Anatolia for most Turks that live there. So with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next one, but thank you once again for the support. I hope we addressed that question fairly well, and we are on to the final one of this segment, and then we'll be moving into the news again.
All right, so the final one of this segment goes to Tangen, who puts in a 50 and says, "Coffee and thank you for a great job, and hit the like button, everyone."
Hey.
And also, thank you, Tangen. It's good to see you again.
And thank you so much, Tangen. We actually saw you on the Sunday night fundraiser. And believe it or not, everyone, we actually managed to raise $11,313 for Doctors Without Borders, that fundraiser. Unbelievable. We actually got $1,313 over our second goal that we had for the night. We started off at 7.5, we moved it up to 10, and then we got $1.3 thousand over that goal too. It was it was a crazy night. And of course, Tangen, you were there and helping out to get that fundraiser to its goal, and a lot of y'all were. And I've got to thank y'all so much for supporting that fundraiser. It, of course, means a lot to me, considering that we've been helping out the Ukrainians over the course of this entire war and have been supporting them and covering the news about what's going on over there. And I think it's incredibly important that if we report on them, we also help them out as well. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support, Tangen. We were going to make sure to get a coffee and make sure to look at the great job we've had and the great Lee Spring Army that has constantly supported us like you and helped us to keep this thing going. Because if it wasn't for y'all watching this stream, liking the stream, adding in y'all's 2 bits in the live chat, supporting us through super chats, helping to donate to the fundraisers, none of this channel would continue to be possible. And y'all make this channel special, y'all make this channel great, and I gotta thank each and every one of y'all for being an incredible part, an integral part of the Lee Spring Army, our culture, and everything that we've made surrounding this channel. It's been absolutely incredible. And so with that, I hope we addressed that one fairly well, Tangen, and thank you so much once again for the support. And I gotta be honest with you, before we move on back into the news segment, I still cannot get Brigiri out of my head, because we've called you Tangen Brigiri for so long that when you changed your name to Tangen, we were like, what, do we still call him Tangen Brigiri? So I'm still like used to calling you Tangen Brigiri, so sorry about that, but thank you so much once again. And with that, we're now moving on out of this question segment and on into the frontline news, sprawling hundreds of miles all the way from the northern border to the Dnipro River reservoir south of Zaporizhia. News has been covering every single part, and the Russian losses have never been higher. And so starting off in the northeastern area of the line, we've seen that, of course, over the past 24 hours, nothing has really changed. It appears that the Ukrainians were actually able to push back the Russians in the area of Bilorivka and create a larger span of no man's land in between Bilorivka and the Russian positions near Shiplivka. But moving on into the northeast, we've also seen something else interesting occur in Kuzumivka, and that's a small firefight occurring in between some Ruski and some Ukrainians. We can see what appears to be a Russian tank firing into some buildings, and we can see some Russian forces moving forward through the rubble. And it appears that there was a Ukrainian APC there that just got hit point blank by a tank. It appears to have already been abandoned. It looks like the hatches were open. We can now see the Russians setting down a drone. And we now see Russian forces moving forward to what appears to be some kind of a cellar near a house complex. It appears that they threw a grenade down the stovepipe, but interestingly enough, we didn't see any smoke come out of the front entranceway. We can now see an entire Russian squad grouping up in a large group near one of these cellars, the one that had the grenade shoved down the stovepipe. And we can now see a Ukrainian soldier coming out of a second one and moving behind it. We can now see the Russians once again revisiting the area and looking at the cellar, dropping another grenade down the stovepipe. And it appears that they're dropping bombs down the cellar that the Ukrainians aren't even in. And it appears that the bombs aren't actually making them into the cellar, because with the stovepipe that close to the doorway, there would be some kind of smoke coming out of the door if it actually exploded in there, and we're not seeing that. So now we can see the Ukrainian soldier aiming at the Russians. We can see that they're getting engaged in a firefight here. Something exploded behind them. We now see explosions occurring all around the area near the Russians and the Ukrainians. And it appears that a small firefight has begun. The Ukrainians are holding their ground, and it appears that one of the Russians was actually hit right there. We can see him fall over onto the ground. And the Russian further behind appears to be squatting in the field behind some kind of cover. He's now firing over it. And now, notice this. Notice this. For the one time in the battle, we actually saw smoke coming out of that hole. We don't know what it was from. It looks like bullets hitting it from the Ukrainian side firing near it, which may also prove that there were no Ukrainian soldiers in that cellar. We now see more explosions occurring in between the Ukrainians and the Russians. It appears that the few Ukrainians that were inside of that cellar are holding their ground quite well against the Russians. One of them has now lobbed a grenade. And we can see the Russians intelligently grouped up. And that Ukrainian... Matthew, the New England Patriots need to recruit that Ukrainian soldier right there, because that almost landed right on the Russians nearly 50 yards away. Watch that toss. He throws the grenade, and it lands right here in front of him. Right there. That was a good toss.
That guy's got a strong arm. Dang. That was some distance.
That was actually unbelievable. You now see the Ukrainian forces still fighting at the cellar. They've been holding the cellar the entire battle. We can now see some more soldiers moving up and setting up positions around the area. And we now see the drone zooming out and trying to get a larger look at the field. We can also see that this was reported on by a Russian television company. This is where the video comes from. So keep in mind it is a Russian film. We can now see some kind of explosion occurring near the Ukrainian lines, but we can't really tell where the Ukrainian soldiers are. We can now see a large Ukrainian squad. Also, notice this. Notice the spacing. Immaculate. That is the proper kind of spacing you should find in a squad, except for these two guys. They're a little close. The rest of them, though, are properly spaced. You never see that in a Russian squad. Ever. They're continuing to move forward past some kind of a destroyed shed. We can see grain spilling outside of it, showing that it was a grain silo. And interestingly enough, the Russians look like they're showing not really a good representation of themselves, or maybe this is the best they could find. Also, we could see that after the Ukrainians had some fairly good spacing, it appears that there's two groups now, one over here to the left, one over to the right. A round of some kind hits and explodes in the field. We can see the Ukrainian forces receding further into the grain silo. We could also see some chickens coming out of it. It appears that they're now moving. One of them fired an RPG in the direction of where Russian forces may be. We can't really confirm if they're there. And it appears that an artillery round has hit the grain silo and exploded, shaking the entire silo and also rocking the Ukrainians. None of the Russian fire is landing close enough to the Ukrainian squad at this point to cause any damage. It appears that all Ukrainian soldiers are uninjured, but the fire is getting somewhat close. Funnily enough, hitting in almost a circular pattern all the way around the squad. We can now see the Ukrainian squad. It appears that they may be retreating back down the same path they came after coming under some Russian artillery fire and moving into some new silo areas and going in between them. It appears that something may have hit close nearby. We can't really tell if it was inside one of the silos or in the middle. We can now see a Ukrainian soldier running out of one of them. and down here into the center. And we can't really tell what's going on in there due to the shadow. We don't know if there were any Ukrainian soldiers in there or not. We now see more rounds hitting inside of the larger silo building that Ukrainian soldier came out of. And we can also see a Ukrainian BTR-4 has come to the aid of the squad and is evacuating some of their wounded soldiers. It looks like the Ukrainians took on several wounded. We can now see a burning APC. I can't tell if that is a different kind of APC from that BTR-4 we saw earlier. And unfortunately, we can see one Ukrainian soldier was wounded there. And also a BTR-4 again. We can now see the drone landing. They're packing up the drone. A cat appears at the end of the video near what appears to be a group of potatoes. And that's the end of the clip, but giving a little bit of a picture of what's going on in the area of Novoselivsk, which is directly attached to the larger town directly across the street of Kuzmivka. Here, battles continue to rage in smaller skirmishes in between Ukrainian forces and Russian forces as both try and lay claim to these two vital towns in a, I guess you could say, village hopping campaign to make it further down the P07 and towards the town of Svatove itself. It appears that the Ukrainians did take on some losses, including the loss of an APC, although it may have been abandoned before it was hit. We can't really tell. We're now moving on into our next bit of footage further on down in the Svatove area, where we saw a Ukrainian soldier firing a mortar. And I gotta tell y'all, this soldier was young. When they call him a young soldier, he looks like he's maybe 17 or 18. So here's the clip. Also, I don't know what that music is, but push it, push it. We now see him loading the mortar. Firing. I mean, he's a pretty young kid. He's probably one of the youngest we've seen so far, 17, 18 years old. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, and hopefully he can continue to operate this mortar and rain down fire on the Russians, and hopefully he stays safe. He's incredibly young, probably has a long life and career ahead of him somewhere, and so hopefully he can get out of this war unscathed. With that, we're now moving on from that bit of news in the Svatove area, and moving on down the rest of the northeastern front, as we don't really have anything to report all the way from Svatove down to Verkno-Kamyanka. From what we can tell, there has been no video or picture evidence coming out of this area, and also there's only been a small engagement that appears to have occurred near the Bielorivka area that pushed the Russians back a small ways. We're now moving out of the northeastern area and on into Bakhmut, which surprisingly enough has had some of the smallest amounts of news that we've ever seen over the course of this battle. This, of course, may indicate that the Ukrainians are in the process of repositioning forces, and that's why there's not a lot of video footage coming out. But in the Blahodatne area, in the northern flank of the battlefield, we did get some interesting video clips, like this Russian infantry fighting vehicle being hit directly by an Excalibur round from an M777. And so, let me... Alright, we gotta mute that because that's 80s techno, and we can see the vehicle there. It gets hit directly by the Excalibur, and it's destroyed immediately. It's now smoking and smoldering. And another nice loss for the Russians to take and for the Ukrainians to claim. We're now going to be moving on from this area and the Excalibur hitting that IFV, and we're now going to be watching this video. I titled this one, 30 Russians, 1 Tank.
What's that named after?
I'd have no idea. You tell me. But anyways, here's the video. Golly, alright, we're going to mute that immediately.
Oh, wow, it's like an MMA fight.
Yeah. Round 1, fight! We can see the Russians moving along through the snowy fields. We can see that, of course, no grouping is being observed as they continue to advance through the area. And wow, look at that. They are all just grouping up like there is no danger present. They're about to find out they're terribly wrong. We now see them moving down a straight line trench. We don't know if this was Ukrainian or Russian made, but very odd to see if it is a Ukrainian trench. We now see them moving through the tree lines, and it appears that their organization is not that good. We can see a Ukrainian tank racing down the road at nearly 30 miles per hour, because it's heard that there are some Russians that need to be taught a lesson. This tank is going to single-handedly send most of these guys to the ranch. Well, you now see that the tank has almost made it there. We can tell that the music edits must be sick. Let's unmute it for a second here. Yeah, pretty sick. We're gonna mute that again because that's probably copyrighted. And we can see the tank driving slowly down the tree line and firing into it, almost like a redneck who's run off his porch to shoot at trespassers on his property. It's hitting the tree line quite effectively, and it appears that the Russians may also be much like those trespassers and taking a load of birdshot to the buttocks as they continue to try and run out of the tree line, realizing their mistake. This tank is really giving it to the Russians. Incredibly so. When you see the trench works that the Russians were in earlier further down the tree line, and it looks like it's trying to swat every single Russian in the area. We haven't seen the Russians yet in the video, but the video edits, I've got to say, are sick. You can tell that the music is absolutely dropping, bussing, and beating, and it's great to know that they're playing such great sick tunes, while the Russians also get pretty sick of this whole fighting thing, because they're not good at it. We can now see the tank reversing out the field, also deploying a smoke screen from its engine, and we can see that the entire trench line is now on fire. Fire is coming from every single square foot of it, and I don't think these Russians will be having a fun day. If any of them have never smoked before, they will be smoking tonight. We can now see that the tank has revisited the tree line again at night, because much like, well, I can't say that joke because that is definitely not going to be YouTube friendly. We're just going to watch the video. We can see the tank firing down the tree line. We can see the tracers from the machine gun rounds hitting near the trench line. And the Russians, they just never learn. We can now see some kind of a flare, or maybe a tracer that's ricocheted off the ground, flying through the sky. Now, as we move closer to the tree line, we can see that it looks like some kind of Eastern Berlin rave as lights are flashing from every single part of the tree line, but I can promise you none of these Russians are having a party. And now we find the end. With all those sick edits, we now see the eyeball of life looking at us and now doing some kind of weird techno thing itself. And it appears that this was the Atom unit that did this to the Russians. And I guess that maybe, Matthew, they hit the Russians' Adam's apple.
Oh,
so that's
good.
That's the end of the clip, and it's nice to see that the Ukrainian tank, or as the video is called, 30 Russians, 1 tank, the tank ended up winning. And, of course, they all lived happily ever after. We're now moving on from that clip, and we can see where some of the Russian losses came from today, as we move down on into Bakhmut, and the center of the battlefield, where we've gotten no real news from today, but we did get some news from yesterday, where we saw a Ukrainian soldier enjoying his rations, combat rations, while under fire. Wait, hang on, let me read that title again. Combat ration situation under artillery fire. It's a ration situation. You see him eating his Nutribar as he's under artillery fire, and this does not distract the Ukrainian from his meal. They did get dirt in his honey, and he'll make sure the Russians pay for that dearly in the next firefight. He is going to eat it anyways because he's a Chad.
Галету с рук выбила, нахуй. Она упала.
The Russians are really messing with this guy's eating schedule, and for that, he's going to make sure that the Russians never have an eating schedule again. With that, that's the end of the video, and I can tell by the look in this guy's face, he is going to take out his anger on a Russian with a trench shovel here in the near future if they ever make it to his lines. Best of luck to that guy, and I hope he didn't get too much dirt in the honey on that Nutribar. We're now going to be moving on out of the center of the front line in the Bakhmut area, and even further on south, and almost out of the southern flank pretty much, into the area of the Kurtamivka Canal, where we saw some Russian soldiers trying to flee a barrage. They weren't that good at it. We can hear the Chad music playing again, because the Chad music is the defining music of every single video in this war, and we can see Ukrainian artillery hitting directly on the Russians from the 28th Brigade. It appears that some fires are now cooking, and the Russians are now running. That is a good combination, and if you ever watched the horror movie The Menu, that is usually not a good sign. They don't like the food, and they need a new menu.
There's a horror movie called The Menu.
Yeah, haven't you seen it, Matthew? There's no substitutions in Hawthorne, and they lower the guy into like the ocean or whatever.
I'll have to watch that one. That's probably interesting.
It's kind of weird. But anyways, also if y'all are wondering, where in the world did I get a time to watch the movie? I never got time to watch the full movie. I watched it on movie recaps. It was like a 13-minute long video. And I usually find that to be a huge help because I don't have time to watch whole movies. So I watch movie recaps instead and just get the plot. So with that, we're now moving on from those 2 Russian soldiers fleeing that barrage. And it appears like they're not having a fun day. So with that, that's the analysis of the Bakhmut area and what's going on right there. And also, we've already gone over the battlefield analysis a little bit earlier on. So that is the situation currently in Bakhmut, accompanied by videos showing you what's really going on. We're now moving out of the Bakhmut area and down into Luhansk, specifically Makivka, because there was a massive fire in Makivka again today as a pipeline exploded and caused, of course, a gas fire. Who would have thought that a gas pipeline exploding would lead to a gas fire? And as you can tell, the Russians just discovered Taco Bell. Imagine a train coming down this line and it's 60 miles an hour and it just comes out the other end engulfed in flames, and the conductor and the driver, well, the engineer is just charred. Like, this is probably not the best thing to have burning near a rail line. And the sound is quite nice. It's just this loud whooshing sound like a waterfall. That's the end of the video, but great to see. And if the partisans were the ones who did it, good job. We're now moving on out of this area in the Makivka direction and on into the front lines near Pisky, because things are getting frisky and pisky as we saw HIMARS firing in this general area.
Lo, 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 lo.
Why did that guy sound like he had the exact same voice? We see the missiles continuing to streak up into the sky and on into glory. That's the end of the video, but good luck to those HIMARS missiles. We know they're going to hit their mark. We just wonder where. We're now moving on out of the Pisky area, the Frisky area, and we're now moving further down the lines and into Marinka, where we saw some very interesting pictures. First off, we saw some Ukrainian soldiers building some defenses in the Marinka area.
333.
See them moving around the building. You hear them firing. And look at that. They've made a hole of glory. This is where many Ukrainian soldiers will end up getting a Russian. If you know, you know. When you see him reloading the gun, immediately firing right back out of the hole. And you see that? He's shouldering the rifle, something the Russians don't do. We now see them moving on from the hole of glory. And moving on
Hey,
out.
he's a brave man turning his back on that hole like that.
Dude, he's a Chad. He's built different. If the Russians
If
the Russians shot through that hole, he would just simply take it. So with that, that's the end of the clip, but a little bit of a look at what's going on still in Marinka. Moving on into our next clip, we saw Marinka after 347 days at war. And this was quite the picture. You can see that the entire town, of course, and we always cover this with Marinka as probably the worst example of this, has been completely destroyed. I would say that Marinka has been destroyed more than Mariupol ever was, and Mariupol is the worst large-scale example of what the Russians have done to a town. Marinka suffered a far worse fate, and you hardly ever hear about it, mostly because this town had already been evacuated and abandoned for years on end before the 2022 war actually kicked off, because this has been the front line for nearly 6 years before this war in between the Ukrainian military and the DP. Oh my god.
Goodness. What in the world?
Oh my lord. Goodness. Call it trouble and make it double. Spencer and Mark came in and just threw in massive super chats. I gotta thank y'all so much for that. But getting back to this real quick, because I feel like that's kind of weird to break from this. This has been the most destroyed town, and lives had already been torn apart during 2014 when the original separatists broke away from Ukraine, backed by the Russians. But this is the worst example of what these broken lives end up being, or completely destroyed towns that look like something you would see straight out of the First World War. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip in Marinka, but still, I got to thank y'all, and of course y'all know we're going to get to it in the next question segment, both Spencer and Mark, for y'all's massive amounts of support. That was crazy, and especially considering that they were both put in at the same time. That, like, I was like, what the hell? Like, the whole live chat for me on my screen turned red. So with that...
Yeah, mine did too.
I was like, something's happened. But with that, we're now moving out of the Marinka area, and we're now moving down into the area where the Russians took the highest amount of losses today that we have ever seen in terms of armor over 24 hours over this small of an area, which is Vuhledar. Starting off with our first clip, which actually shows the Russians getting a bit of an upper hand, and I had to show this clip because this is something we've never seen before, was the 155th Marine Infantry Brigade in action. The 155th Marine Infantry Brigade is one of Russia's crack units, if you ever want to call any of them crack. I would say that the 155th Marine Infantry Brigade is probably at the level of a U.S. Army Reserve unit. That's what the Russians call a crack unit. But that, for them, is way above the normal conscripts, which really don't even know how to shoot a rifle. We saw them operating a T-80 BVM today, and it appears that they were able to hit 2 Ukrainian BMPs somewhere in the area. Also, interestingly enough, they were also using barrel-launched ATGMs. I told you all a while ago, but it's a very small side note, that Russian main battle tanks have been made where they can fire ATGMs directly out of their tank's cannon. This is incredibly special and bizarre compared to most Western main battle tanks or tanks in general, because almost no Western main battle tank or tank ever made has been able to fire ATGMs out of the barrel. One of the few that was ever made was the M55-1 Sheridan, which was phased out of service after the Gulf War, and this thing was pretty bizarre, but it could shoot a Shiliag 8 anti-tank guided missile, and it was kind of special in that regard. Beyond that, the Sheridan was terrible, and we were immediately looking for a replacement. Oh my god, Tristan.
Thank you, Tristan, too.
Thank you. But this thing...
Tristan 1, actually.
But they started looking to phase this thing out of service as soon as it was brought into service. So I'm going to show you all this video real quick, but keep in mind, it is a little unfortunate that 2 Ukrainian BMPs were lost. When you see the ATGM on its way, and also notice the quality of the optics on the T-80 BVM, they are quite poor. It looks like it's in like 280, well no, more like 240p as a graphic setting. Now you see one BMP get hit there. We now see them firing a second ATGM. And now we can see that the second ATGM is going towards a second Ukrainian BMP, which also was hit. And it appears it's also gone through an ammunition cook-off and has been destroyed, unfortunately. This, of course, seems to be a bad start to the Battle of Vuhledar, but if you think these 2 Ukrainian BMPs are leveling off the amount of Russian losses that have been taken in the past 24 hours, you would be completely mistaken. This pales in comparison to the pictures and videos that y'all are about to see of what's been happening in the Battle of Vuhledar, which has been somewhat costly compared to most battles for the Ukrainian forces. As you can see, they lost 2 BMPs, which for the Russians would be an incredibly great day, but for the Ukrainians is not that great of a day at all. But here, I'm going to show y'all real quick. I'm not going to lead y'all into this. Here's the Russian losses that were also taken in Vuhledar. Here's a failed push that the Russians tried to conduct in the area. There's the picture. 1 T-80, 2 T-80s, another T-72 B-3s, 2 of those. So we have 4 main battle tanks lost in this convoy right there. We also have about 4 BMP-2s that were lost. Actually, 5 BMP-2s that were lost right there. We also... It's reconnected again. Oh, it's reconnected. All right, we're back.
Oh, we're back.
All right, so we're going to keep on moving through the news. So the Ukrainians lost 2 BMPs, from what we can tell today. The Russians have lost 7 of them in this one convoy right here. 7 of them. So if you compare that, that means that the Russians lost 350% more BMPs in this one column than the Ukrainians have lost over 24 hours. So already the Ukrainians are at an inherent great advantage. Not only that, but they lost 5 main battle tanks too, and one of them may have been that T-80 BVM that we saw firing at the Ukrainian BMPs a little bit earlier on. So great to know. You can also see the Russian crew members from these vehicles retreating off of the field. You can actually see them here, here, and up here, running away as fast as they can. So it appears that this entire column was wiped out within minutes, considering that almost all of the crews are running off at the same time. We're now going to be moving on from this clip and on into our next one, where we also saw another Russian tank getting hit today in the Vuhledar area. When you see the tank right there, wait a minute, that's a T-80 BVM. And we know that those are fairly rare. In the other video we saw of the 2 Ukrainian BMP-2s getting hit was of a T-80 BVM. I'm wondering, Matthew, I wonder if that is the T-80 BVM that took that video.
It could be.
It could be.
Maybe.
It gets hit directly on the side of the turret. And we can see some pieces of the T-80 falling off. You see them falling on the ground right there. Oh, and they got it.
We hadn't had lag like this in such a long time. I wonder what's causing it tonight.
I wonder what it is. I'm actually curious. But still, another T-80 BVM destroyed, and another good day for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. That may have been the T-80 BVM we saw earlier. We're now moving on into our last clip from Vuhledar, where we also saw a Russian BMP-3 get destroyed by a mine, because they ran over it. So... And also, I want to apologize, everyone, for the lag. Sadly, we can't control the internet issues. I don't know what's causing the internet to have some issues tonight, but it appears as causing some lag. So please bear with us. That is something that we like to do on our end, is lag, because we generally like smooth streaming. So, here's the video. You hear the Chad music playing again. We can see the BMP-3 rolling out into a graveyard of other BMPs that have also taken the same path. And... oh, wait a minute, there's another BMP up here. It's actually alive, and it's firing. And, oh my god, was that the turret? Oh my god, it was! Look at the turret go! Watch, Randy, look.
Oh man, god. That is a 10 out of 10 in my book.
That is the space program in my book. That's not even a turret toss. That is Sputnik. Oh my god, I've never seen a turret fly that fast. It's gone. That thing's in Turkey. Good lord, I can't believe it. And also, all the BMPs were alive, except for that one at the end of this video. So, just to let y'all know, no BMPs were harmed in this video. They were absolutely slaughtered. So we're now going to be moving on from this clip. Nice to see that that BMP will no longer operate. And we're now moving on out of the Vuhledar area and further down the Zaporizhia line. And interestingly enough, there was no frontline movement on the Zaporizhia line, so just keep that in mind. There's nothing really to add to it. These are just videos of engagements that the Ukrainians and Russians have been getting involved in today. We're now moving on into Vuhledar, where we saw that the 228th Territorial Defense Brigade found some Russian positions and then gave them a small dose of medicine. This medicine is also known as 7.62 and 5.45 slugs. So here's the video.
Работай! А то!
Oh, this video's lag. Come on, don't tell me. Alright. And there you'll have it. He also took a look inside of a Ukrainian meat grinding facility. And it's great to see how they make the hamburger meat. It looks like it's got to be finely minced at that point, I'd say. And so we're now going to be moving on from the 228th, which did a great job dusting the Russians. And we're now moving into the area of Marinka, where we saw that the Kraken unit was able to destroy a Russian headquarters. Fairly sweet, if you ask me. Now, I'll keep this in mind, everyone. I did notice that while we've never seen this footage before, the foliage around the houses is all green, which shows that this may have been made earlier, but we did locate it down into the southern area near Zaporizhia. So keep in mind, this may be old footage. We haven't seen it before, so we're showing it today. We can see them running into their headquarters. We can now see the Ukrainians loading an artillery piece. We now see them firing it. We now see the first round coming in, absolutely demolishing the house. And I don't think there's anything left once the smoke clears. Yeah, there's nothing left. The whole top floor is gone. They're now going to remove the first floor as well and eventually get down to the bottom of this, literally. That's the end of the video. I don't think they'll be using that one as a headquarters anymore. So we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into our last one from the Zaporizhia front, where we saw a T-64 get hit by a bomblet, and funnily enough, the commander of the T-64 was outside of the turret when it got hit. So here's the video. When you see the bomblet hit, when you see the commander right there, he goes, "Ugh, bleh." Or like that guy under the bridge when he went, "Ugh," and then he went back into the turret, and he's going to close the hatch here in a minute. But now it looks like they're reversing off the field because he decided it's not fun here anymore. That's the end of the video. Of course, no frontline movements occurred in the southern front area around Zaporizhia, but quite a lot of action occurred, especially compared to what we normally see. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into the Kherson area because, you know, it's a fun place. Unlike old school, who says the Russians are kicking ass, they're kicking their own. And so with that, we're now moving on into the area of Kardashian. Oh, hang on, let me make sure I can get this right.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Come on. But let's see. Kardashinka. Yeah, Kardashinka, that's what it's called. All right.
Kardashian.
The Kardashians? Level it. But anyway, so you can see the Ukrainian artillery hitting the Kardashians. We can hear great documentary music playing. This is the kind of music you would hear, like, when you hear this. "Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. Did you know I'm hiding inside your walls?" Now we're going to meet...
That was an interesting line.
When you see the loitering munition come in, and it gets the Russians right on. The number 1 is an incredibly interesting number, I do have to admit.
It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
Call them out.
Call them
out, like Paul Plonsky said.
Call them out. Call them out. We now see the artillery also coming down on the Russian position. And you know what they say? You can't win a war without absolutely, well, we're not going to say that. Call them out. Call them out. Paula McDonald also said call them out. And Lewis, I have to say the least, we have to call them out. So with that's the end of the clip, and you can see the Russians getting turned into a fine pink mist once again in the southern area of Kherson, where they can't even cross the river. So they're just down there getting blown away, and all they can do is cry about it. We're now going to be moving on out of the Kherson area. Of course, nothing happened down there. And we're now moving all the way up to Kyiv, because, you all know it, it is time for the speech from President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 250 of the war. And so, without further ado, here's the address.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Звітую про цей день, черговий день нашої оборони. Перше. Верховна Рада України голосування щодо кандидатури Ігоря Клименка на посаду міністра внутрішніх справ. Важливо, що система МВС, яка є елементом загальної системи оборони і безпеки, достатньо швидко отримала керівника, який пройшов разом з усіма шлях захисту нашої держави з перших хвилин повномасштабного вторгнення. Зараз у нас є люди, які здобули досвід такої війни, мають чіткі результати в своїй роботі на державу, що воює за свій народ і за свою незалежність. Таких людей має бути більше на посадах різного рівня в органах центральної та місцевої влади. Відповідні призначення погоджені Кабінетом міністрів України. Дніпропетровську, Запорізьку та Херсонську обласні адміністрації очолюють фахівці, які мають досвід реального захисту держави саме зараз. Зустрівся сьогодні з міністром оборони Німеччини, який прибув у Київ. Тематика розмови очевидна. Робимо все для чистоти нашого неба, для того, щоб у наших воїнів були потужні танки і щоб наша артилерія не поступалася окупанту. Я дякую Німеччині та усім партнерам за відповідну підтримку. Сьогодні ж традиційно провів кілька нарад з військовими, нараду з керівником розвідки. Зберігаємо максимальну увагу на тому, що готують окупанти, і на тому, що потрібно нашим воїнам, щоб ефективно протистояти. Причому на всіх напрямках. Донеччина і Схід, де найгарячіше. Я про них згадую щодня у таких зверненнях. Південь звучить рідше, хоча стратегічне значення цих напрямків не менше. А зміцнюємо державу по всьому периметру. І я хочу сьогодні відзначити бійців на двох напрямках. Наших прикордонників, які воюють на Донбасі, за щоденну хоробрість і стійкість в боях. За результати. Луганський та Харківський прикордонні загони. Я дякую вам, хлопці. Дякую всім нашим захисникам і захисницям, які забезпечують охорону півночі нашої держави. Суми, Чернігів, Київ, Житомирщина, Волинь, оперативно-стратегічне угруповання «Північ». Кожен напрямок має значення. Всі ворожі сценарії опрацьовуємо. Державу захищаємо. Зустрівся сьогодні з амбасадорами нашої благодійної платформи United24, нашою спортсменкою Еліною Світоліною і французьким режисером Мішелем Азанавічусом. Мішель приєднався до амбасадорів і буде допомагати нам з відбудовою. Це наш перший голос United24 у Франції. І я вірю, що цей голос буде потужним. Був радий почути, що наша державна благодійна платформа змогла акумулювати вже майже $300 мільйонів від звичайних людей і компаній з понад 100 країн світу. Говорив з президентом Туреччини Ердоганом, висловив співчуття, розказав про наші кроки на допомогу турецькому народу, щоб пройти це важке випробування. Українські рятувальники вже направились в Туреччину, щоб посилити рятувальну операцію після землетрусів. Сподіваюсь, вдасться зберегти життя якнайбільшій кількості людей. Дякую всім, хто береже життя, дякую всім, хто воює за Україну, дякую всім, хто допомагає. Слава Україні!
With that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 350 of the war in Ukraine. And that wraps out our day 349 and day 350 news summary, and we're now about to be rounding out this news segment. I thank everyone who's watched this news segment so much once again for watching. It's been a high honor to know that so many people have found this channel to be a quality source of news of the goings and happenings of Ukraine during this war. And if you did enjoy and you were new to this channel, please make sure to subscribe, as this channel runs a stream every single day of the week, Tuesday through Sunday, except for Mondays. Mondays are the only day that this channel takes off, but every other day of the week, you can count on us to be right here on this computer, reporting on the past 24 hours of the war, and also making sure that everyone keeps up to date. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Thank you all once again for enjoying the news. And so with that, we're about to be moving into our question segment. But before we get to the questions, we have to address the polls. And let me make it clear, just in case if anyone's confused, because we always have people who are always confused, this is the question segment. If we sidetrack off of the Ukraine war, it's the question segment. It doesn't have to stay on the Ukraine war. You can bring up anything you want during the question segment. You can bring up Turkey, you can bring up history, you can bring up anything. And if you send in a super chat, we'll be guaranteed to cover it. If you send in a live chat, we try and get to every single live chat we can. We can't get to them all most nights, and I feel like we probably won't be able to tonight, but we will try and get to them. And so you can bring up anything you want. It's the question segment. It's a free-for-all. So with that, let's get on into the polls.
All right, and for our final question segment, we have a whopping 5 polls to address. So the very first one says, how do you view Turkey with its relationship to Ukraine? It looks like 35% said they sit on the fence, 30% said it's an ally of Ukraine, 12% said unsure, and 24% said not an ally, only a supplier. And I'm going to go with the most popular option, which is sitting on the fence, because it seems like Turkey mainly looks out for its own interests, but it does a couple of things which suggest it might be lenient toward Ukraine's plight, but it's kind of hard to tell in my opinion. But Enforcer, what's your take?
My take, and this would take a lot of unpacking to explain Turkey, because Turkey doesn't fall within our typical spheres of influence that we imagine now. Like, the US and European sphere of influence, or the Chinese sphere of influence, or the incredibly small and constantly dying Russian sphere of influence like we're seeing right now. Turkey is kind of its own thing, and while it is a NATO member and slightly a European Union member, it's doing its own thing. Interestingly enough, I've been watching a lot of videos on this, and Turkey, over the past century, has practically been a neutral country like Switzerland that rarely gets involved in external affairs and only joined NATO because it seemed at the time to be a smart thing to do. Beyond that, they would have stayed out of NATO as well, but they were scared of the Soviets to the north trying to invade and annex them because they were not allied with the West, so then they allied with the United States. Moving on into the present day, though, Turkey is kind of trying to reassert itself as an economic power and grow, and also create its own sphere of influence through other spheres of influence, which is kind of weird. It's like a hybrid sphere. The Turks are trying to draw in pretty much any Balkan country they can into their sphere by creating economic incentives to do so, investing heavily in Balkan countries and their development, especially Serbia's, considering that Serbia was kind of rejected by and large by the European Union. They're still not an EU or a NATO member, and the Turks have found that that's a great way to try and build some kind of influence or exert some kind of power in Serbia. They're constantly trying to screw over the Russians, and the Russians are always constantly trying to screw them over. So anything in the end that can screw the Russians over, the Turks are for. You can see that in their invasion of Syria, well, northern Syria, because the Russians got involved there, so then they got involved, which is a reason why they're there. And it's also another reason is Assad funded and trained the militant Kurds that are still fighting in the southeastern area of Turkey. So those were two reasons for them to go into Syria. They're also trying to screw over the Russians really everywhere else, because the Russians are trying to build some kind of sphere in the Middle East, and the Turks are also trying to build an economic relationship with most countries in the Middle East that they can. So that's generally the reason why the Turks are supporting the Ukrainians. Also, they are supporting the Ukrainians because they're seeing an opportunity for Turkish investment and also economic growth for themselves there, because Ukraine, if they trade anything, most trade, of course, Matthew, is done by what mode of transportation?
Boat.
By sea. And where in the world yeah, good job, Matthew, 5 bonus points. Where in the world would Ukrainian ships have to go to trade their goods?
I don't know, you tell me.
The Bosphorus Strait. They would have to go through the Black Sea and through the Bosphorus Strait at Istanbul to reach the Mediterranean and the rest of the wider world. And so if the Turks help to fund and develop the Ukrainian economy in the future and also support them in this current war, there's a lot of economic potential for the Turks to make plenty of money and also have a great economic and political ally in the future to work with. And so that's why Turkey is actually more so an ally of Ukraine, because they see common interests in the future that would benefit both Turkey and Ukraine. And also that's why they're willingly giving away Bayraktars mostly for free to Ukraine, and also allowing them to buy some at a discount or allowing other people to buy them, because anything that helps out Ukraine and also helps out their economy is something that the Turkish are viewing as good. So with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well. I would actually view Turkey as an ally of Ukraine, although in other areas it seems as though Turkey generally goes against what the West wants, but that's a whole other story for a whole other time that would probably require hours of long videos. But hey, there's a great place you could find those videos that I haven't even made. There's a channel called Kraut. And Kraut makes animations with these things called country balls, which is kind of a little weird, but still his content and his information is incredibly well researched and incredibly informative. And a lot of what I've been trying to find to read, he's pretty much ended up summarizing in his videos. So actually a great channel. And if y'all want to learn about Turkey, he has like pretty much a Forrest Gump length amount of documentaries that he's made about Turkey's history and how it's gotten to the present day and why they're there. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says Leopard 2 tanks will be ready for Ukraine at the end of March, says the German army. So the question is it soon enough? It looks like 41% said it's pushing the time limit, 36% said they will arrive on time, while 13% said no, that is too late to be effective, and 10% said unsure. And on this one, I'm going to have to say, I think they're going to arrive on time, because late March, that's not too far away, and I think this war is going to be prolonged probably for a couple years, in my opinion. So I think that is plenty of time and quick enough to get them received by Ukraine to be effective. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that is a fairly good timetable, especially considering the training involved in getting Leopard crews ready to go. That is a very optimistic time schedule, actually, to get them in that early. The Polish have actually created an accelerated training program that will get a crew ready in 5 weeks, which is unbelievable, especially compared to the normal training time that would be required. So I would say that is a great timetable, and they'll probably arrive just in time. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
Now, we'll have to admit, though, I think Abrams is going to be another story. I think the Leopard is probably Ukraine's better bet at this point, because I doubt that Abrams are going to arrive on time, in my opinion. Well, do you know, like, at this point, what is the expected date they will arrive in Ukraine?
I have no idea, because we hear almost something new every day about the delivery window. It either gets shorter or it gets longer. I have no idea. We're honestly just going to have to wait and see the first pictures of Abrams in Ukraine, and that'll probably be the time we actually know that they've made it.
Well, hopefully those Leopards get there on the timetable the Germans expect then. But anyways, our next poll says Ukraine has removed millions of books from libraries in a de-Russification effort. And what are your thoughts about that? It looks like 38% said I am not in favor of banning books, 6% said unsure, 29% said it depends on what's in the book, and 26% said good, remove all Russian-linked books from Ukrainian libraries. Now, on this one, I have to say, we heard yesterday, or a couple days ago, that Russia was burning books, and I wasn't happy to hear that at all. That's usually a very bad sign. And I saw here, it looks like the guidelines, according to a Ukrainian official, are to withdraw books of authors who support Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and also any other books that seem to fall under an unfavorable category. I have to admit, I am not really a fan of that. I think people should be able to read the books and decide for themselves whether or not they want to support it or not. And I have a feeling that most in Ukraine aren't going to support Russia's position simply by reading a book, because they see the atrocities happening right in front of their face. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's not really a good idea, especially coming from an American perspective, of burning books, banning books, or I guess you could say limiting the distribution of books or any kind of published information or media. That is never really a great thing to do. The United States, though, does that on occasion. Really every country does that at one point or another. If you're in a war, usually you destroy any kind of media that views the other side in a positive light, but the United States still is very restrained usually on that compared to the levels that other countries go to. And coming from a background and a historical perspective like that here in America, I never really find it a good idea to ban an opposition from existing or banning their viewpoint to be viewed. If it is not a good viewpoint, people naturally will not gravitate towards it or support it. So in my opinion, it's not a great idea to remove books or burn books of any kind anywhere for any reason. It doesn't matter what they say, whether it be far to the left, far to the right, communist, fascist, whatever it may be, nationalist, imperialistic. You have to really, if you're for free speech, you really just have to let all of that exist, even in the middle of a war, and that would just be my opinion. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, because while I understand where they're coming from, that's still not really a good thing to do and seems to be anti-free speech. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, should Ukraine place booby traps all around Bakhmut before a potential retreat? It looks like 69%. Nice. Said yes, place traps everywhere. 10% said unsure, and 21% said no, just fall back and regroup. Now, on this one, I have to admit, I'm not sure if we have criticized the Russians in the past for doing this or not, so I'm going to fall in the unsure category. But to be completely honest, I would lean toward the yes option. It seems like a good opportunity to, I guess, level the playing field a little bit. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say setting traps around the Bakhmut area probably wouldn't be that bad of an idea. There's almost no citizens left. Most of them have been evacuated or have currently been killed in the fighting, unfortunately. So I would say it wouldn't be that bad of a deal, because you know that there wouldn't be a citizen left to fall onto one of these traps and get themselves killed. So I would say that would be a perfectly fine thing to do, considering that the risk to citizens is incredibly low, if not even there. So with that, I hope I addressed that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one. Also, I've seen, interestingly enough, I gotta go up here and find it. Someone said, so wait a minute, you know, they're in the middle of a war. They're trying to oh, here we go. Team Koji 17 said, Enforcer, they are at war. They are deleting Russian influence. And I get what you're saying with that. And I will say this, because it does sound a little hypocritical, and I'll explain the difference here, that we always ban pro-Russians that come in here as trolls in the live chat. Even people who are just straight up pro-Russian do get banned from our live chat. There's a little bit of a difference, though. We aren't a government institution. We are a private group of, well, Matthew and me are just a YouTube channel running a stream, so we kind of get to run and curate how things go here. But as a government and as a society, banning opposition ideas isn't a great thing. I'm not pro-Russian at all. I'm entirely pro-Ukrainian, but I think it is important and necessary, especially in a country that that prides itself on being a free country with free speech that allows people to talk about whatever, that a pro-Russian narrative can be said and spread. Because if you hide something or you try and bury it, it shows that you're actually scared of that thing superseding what you believe in and then eventually winning it over because for some reason your side's weak. For example, look at the Soviet Union. They would put you in prison if you said anything against the communist system. And that's because communism, by and large, can't really be supported in an argument if it's allowed into an open platform where you can really bring up anything you want in an attack against it. It can't really survive. So for that reason, I think that it shouldn't be really suppressed, because the Ukrainians, in my opinion, have a clear point in saying that they are their own sovereign country with their own national identity and that they should defend that and also defend their sovereignty. And so I don't think that allowing pro-Russian dissenters, as long as they aren't trying to incite any kind of unrest, riots, or straight revolution against the Ukrainian nation, should be suppressed, because they don't really have a point. And even if people look at it, best thing they'll do is probably laugh at it. So with that, I hope that addresses my...
I have to admit, like, on top of that point, I have to admit, I understand why Ukraine would want to do it, because at this point, you know, with everything that's happened so far, they want to take their anger out. So it's understandable, but I just have to say I'm still not a fan of it. But you know, I'm not gonna you know, attack them or anything over it, because, like I said, for the 5th time, it's understandable.
And also Landlover said, "You were running for president!" ! If I am, then it's very important that I protect free speech, because imagine if I was the president who said, I will ban certain things. What would I do as president? Well, I start banning things that I politically don't agree with? That's a dangerous path. And while you can always have your own opinions, you can't let those opinions go and start crushing other people and make sure that that's a society-wide thing. Because if I can do it, and here's, you always have to do this, the double-edged sword test. That's what I call it. If I can do it, what if the others can do it? If I can sit there and oppress free speech and start shutting things down that I don't agree with, that means that the pro-Russians, if they get a large majority of the population, can start to shut down what I say and what I do. And that's a very slippery slope right there, because once you allow that to happen, anyone can do it. And you're not always, you and your people who think the way you think, like we do right here, are not always going to be the ones who are popular. In 20 or 30 years' time, things may have changed. And then you are not the oppressors, you're the ones being oppressed. That's why freedom of speech exists, so that way you don't have that kind of back and forth reprisal thing going on in society and causing a whole bunch of destabilization, strife, and sometimes just straight up armed conflict. But with that, I hope that reiterates the point fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, in our 5th and final poll we have, before I say the question, I want to preface it with this, because I saw some folks getting very upset. This question is not intended to suggest that Ukraine is going to lose the war. It's simply trying to highlight why it's so important for Ukraine to win the war, because we don't want this outcome. So the question is, if Ukraine were to lose the war, do you believe Russia would conduct a systematic genocide? It looks like 79% said yes, and it would be horrific. 7% said unsure. 9% said only isolated incidents. And 5% said no, Russia would simply claim the land. And for me, after seeing what we've seen in this war and all the human rights violations, I have a very strong feeling that we would see a systematic genocide if Russia were to take Ukraine, which is why it's so important for the West to support Ukraine's efforts to win the war.
Looks like we've reconnected. So now we can come back. So what was the question again? Can we rehear it?
How much of my spill did you hear?
I heard all of it, but due to the lag, I got thrown off, so I got to hear it again.
Okay, so the question is, if Ukraine were to lose the war, do you believe Russia would conduct a systematic genocide?
Yes, I would agree with the majority of everyone that they would conduct a mass genocide, because we've seen so many atrocities in occupied areas. It would be completely fantasy to say, if the Russians had dominated the entire country in the first week, there would have never been any kind of atrocities. That would be completely false. We've seen that on a small scale, they commit atrocities in occupied territory. They are currently committing genocide. They will commit genocide if they took the entire country. And that's why, on a humanitarian level, not a strategic level, not a U.S. Strategic concern level, not a NATO concern level, on just a humanitarian level, it's incredibly important to support the Ukrainians and their war effort, because if they do end up losing to the Russians, which they won't, I don't think they ever will, if they did end up losing to the Russians earlier on in the war and history had turned out differently, we would never have heard about any of the atrocities that were occurring right now. They would be just little whispers that you would hear in side articles on major news network websites. You would maybe hear about them at all. Instead, they would talk about, I don't know, the NBA or something like that instead, and they would fill up the news articles with that. Wait, hang on. Just noticed something there. But moving on from that, there may be huge things that would be happening there that we wouldn't really hear about, because believe it or not, we don't hear about what's going on in Western China much, and I can't really even talk about it much because YouTube doesn't really like that. But think about that. Those people never got any kind of press attention, and what's happening over there is horrendous. What's happening in Ukraine, or what would happen in Ukraine, would be horrendous. So I would definitely say that would definitely be what the Russians would do if they took over the entire country, and that is a very important reason, just on a humanitarian and a moral level, to continue to support Ukraine with arms and with economic aid to make sure that they can keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we addressed that poll fairly well.
All right, and hopefully we have smooth sailing for the rest of the night and no more lag. But that might be a very big ask for our internet service provider. But anyways, that was our last poll. So we're moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we're going to address that massive support that was put in earlier by Spencer, who put in a $500 donation to the stream. Extremely generous. And thank you so much, Spencer. He says, pick it from the chat.
Thank you for the support, Spencer. And I was saying, I forgot what the super chat actually was, Matthew. I was thinking, like, oh, it's probably going to be a really big question. And then all he says is, pick it from the chat. Well, I got to thank you so much for the support, Spencer. That is massive. And that completely took us by surprise, because we never really expect people to support this channel. It is the only way that we keep it running, but it always takes us by surprise whenever anyone supports the channel, and especially to that degree. That is huge, and I gotta thank you so much for that, Spencer, because support like that to this channel rarely ever comes around. Like, super chats that size are very few and far in between, and it completely blows us away that you find the channel to be that worthwhile and that valuable to you, that you would support us like that. And so I gotta thank you once again, Spencer. An absolute fundraiser G, by the way. Incredible Chad in terms of fundraising for supporting this channel, and we will make sure to pick one from the live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and in honor of Spencer's super chat, we are going to pick this one from the live chat, which goes to Aaron Lowe, who says, should the world boycott the Olympics if they allow Russian athletes to compete?
I would say, yeah, I think that the world should, because the fact that the Russians were juicing when they got banned a while ago, and now with what's going on in the current war in Ukraine, they're going to allow the Russian team to compete again, and I'm sure they're going to be juicing again. It's just going to be a matter of time before they get caught. I think that that the world should boycott the Olympics if they go in there. And that's just on the principle of cheaters. The Russians are flat out cheaters, and they've been proved to have been cheating for years by drugging up their Olympians to unbelievable levels. I mean, like, they found blood in their drugs. They didn't even find drugs in their blood. That's how drugged up these people were. And the fact that they're even going to let them in after that happened, and that was a huge embarrassment also for the Olympics. I think that the world should boycott the return of Russia as a country competing. But that's my opinion. And what do you think on it, Matthew?
I think we should totally boycott the Olympics. the Olympics has had a little bit of a history starting a while back with sort of ignoring human rights violations. Like, for example, they just held it in China a while back, and that was not a good thing. Also, now they're going to let Russians compete. And everybody knows the implications of allowing people to compete in the Olympics. It's basically representations of certain countries. So by allowing Russian athletes to compete, it's basically turning a blind eye to what's happening in Ukraine, which is not right.
And I'm gonna be honest with y'all on a level of talking about the Olympics itself. The Olympics is going the way of the World's Fair. It's becoming incredibly expensive to run. It's actually losing most cities any kind of profits when they actually host an Olympics. And the Olympics are really finding a very hard time finding bidders that want to take on the Olympics, because ever since the 2012 London Olympics, no one has made a profit on the Olympics. London broke even. And that was one of the first times ever in world history that a city had not made money off of the Olympics. They had just broken even. And since then, nobody has made a dollar on the Olympics. They've been losing millions of dollars every place they've gone. The Olympics Committee is getting incredibly greedy with the amount of money that they're taking from these people, from these cities. They're not making anything off of it. And to be honest, on that level, the Olympics is starting to lose its fervor and its favor, because the Olympics Committee has gotten so greedy that they're practically ripping people off to host their own Olympics somewhere and to make themselves money. So I would say that boycotting the Olympics and a stupid decision like this is probably them trying to figure out some way to make a little bit of extra money and squeeze the like bleed the turnip dry in a way to make a little bit of money off of this dying organization. And then they'll probably kill it off because most of the world will boycott the Olympics. No one will show up, no one will attend, and then we'll see the Olympics die right here and then. So with that, that's really my opinion on the Olympics. Not to say that I wouldn't want to see it exist. I would love to see it exist if they would stop ripping people off that are hosting the Olympics, and also that they wouldn't make stupid decisions like this, especially given the current light of what's going on in the world. But they've practically destroyed all of their credibility over the years with what they've been doing, where they've been going, how much money they're ripping off from people, and all of that. Kind of like how the World's Fair went and eventually died, for the most part, in 1964 in New York City. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Spencer, for sponsoring that live chat. That was a really good one. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the massive support.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Spencer. And also, real quick, before we move on to the next super chat, I just got to say that I got a really cool message, and I can't give any details on it for OPSEC reasons, but a really cool message from somebody who's been watching from the start of the war, that is in Ukraine fighting in the military, along with his entire unit, which I won't mention. And they've been watching the stream the entire time, and they say that they were very thankful for the coverage. And I got to say, that is so cool. When I saw it a minute ago, I verified it because he sent proof along with it. And it is actually true. It's crazy to know that entire units are watching the stream every night. And big shout out to you. You know who you are. And that was really cool to get to see the pictures, by the way.
Could you send the unit name to me real quick in my DM?
Yeah.
All right. We'll wait for that for a second. Stand by, everyone, because I want to make sure to also know who they are. We're not going to mention them, but do they want to remain anonymous?
Yes, they definitely want to remain anonymous.
Okay, got you. And there we go. It reconnected.
Oh, I think we're back.
We are back. And I'm still waiting on that, Matthew. I'm still waiting.
Still trying to get it sent over. It's screwing up big time. Let's see.
It's a little screwy. Let's see. Oh, okay. So they didn't even list their name of their unit there. But anyways,
you can see the unit in the photo, but obviously can't mention it.
Dagnabbit. I guess I'll have to find out after the stream. But I do thank all the soldiers of Ukraine that watch this channel for watching it. I find it to be a high honor, like Matthew said, that all of y'all over there, thousands of miles across the sea, watch this channel and enjoy our news, and also get a good idea or a bigger picture of what's going on around the front lines that y'all may not be hearing. And it's just great to know that all of y'all watch it. I'll make sure to check that out. When the stream ends, I'll just hop over there into your room and check it out on your computer. But thank you so much once again to the whole unit for watching. Also, let's see, what shall we say? Long live the LSA and Slava Ukraini. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you all for watching.
Yes, indeed. That is really cool to see. And up next, we have a $150 super chat from none other than Mark, Slava Ukraine.
Another fundraising G.
Yes, indeed. And this is something out of character for Mark to say, so it's kind of catching me off guard a little bit. He said, woof, die, Russians. Enough said. LSA, LSA, LSA.
Wait a minute, Matthew. For some reason, I'm imagining this in like a British voice. Woof, die, Russians. Enough said. But anyways,
Yeah.
thank you.
Something like that.
Thank you so much for the support, Mark. Spencer and Mark are fundraising legends. I remember one time Mark threw in, what was it, like $25,000 in a single fundraiser?
Yeah, something like that.
Mark is, I think, like Spencer is well on up there. I think he's the third highest fundraiser donor that has ever been on this channel. Mark, I believe, is either second or first. It's really close in between you and Narya, and I believe you may have actually overtaken Narya over time. So I think Mark is actually the #1 fundraiser supporter on this channel, and I gotta thank you so much once again for the support to the fundraisers, Mark, and also to this channel as well. And so, enough said. And LSA, long live the LSA. By the way, we have merch, guys. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Mark, and supporting the LSA, and also supporting those Russians getting turned into fine red mist.
Indeed. And also, since you mentioned merch, I saw somebody asking in my DMs earlier, when is our next merch run coming out? And to be totally honest, I'm not really sure, but we try to do one, I think, once every 2 months or something like that. Right, Enforcer?
What? No, we try to do one once every 2 weeks. We haven't ever gotten around to one.
We got to get to another one. And I've got some good ideas, and I'll have to get working on that very soon. It's just we've been tied up a lot with that little secret project going on in the background. Project Rabbit Hole, but we will get back on it very, very soon.
And it's super secret. Let me tell y'all, I'm proud to probably tell y'all all about it on Friday or Saturday. I don't really know. I'm kind of like trying to figure out Friday or Saturday, but it's all coming together now. Like they say in that movie from Disney, it's all coming together. And y'all are going to really be impressed with what we have in store for the 365th day, which will be February 24th. We'll be making that show happen on February 24th. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Trister1, who puts in a $100 donation, which is also very generous. And thank you, Trister. And I don't see a comment. It must have been a super sticker. But no. Trister, thank you very much for the support.
No, there was no sticker or nothing. It was just the support. That was it. He didn't even leave anything.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah, what do you know? And I got to thank you so much once again for the support, Trista. You've also helped out this channel a massive deal over the course of this war. And I got to thank you, because you didn't even leave a comment for us to address. It was just raw support, and that's really something. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we've addressed that fairly well, and we're now going to be moving on to the next one. But thank you for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
Indeed. And also, Marichka said, art by Miles is merch-worthy. Oh, and yes, you are correct. Miles's art is museum-worthy almost. It is very high quality. That last one he did with the painting of the Ukrainian holding the child's hand in the field, that was really, really top notch.
Also, we had a really good question here, Matthew. I saw, let me make sure, Indoor Slayer threw in a question. He said, why not make special merch for the 1-year special? And I'll explain why that's probably not happening, is because it'll be a fundraiser night, so we would have a conflict of interest there, because we would be plugging our merch and also plugging a fundraiser, and then that forces some of y'all to decide whether y'all are going to buy our merch and support this channel, or send in a donation to the fundraiser and help out people in Ukraine. And we try and make that divide as clear as possible every day of the week, like Tuesday through Saturday, everyone supports this channel and helps us to keep the thing rolling. Sundays, we remove everything. You can't send in a super chat. You can't even go to I think our merch store. I have removed the link to our merch store in the description. I remove everything because if y'all come on that night, I don't want y'all to be divided like, oh, do I really want a shirt tonight, or do I want to support Ukraine? I want y'all to support Ukraine entirely whenever we're running a fundraiser. So we usually remove all of our merch. So we couldn't do one for that day because, you know, we wouldn't really be able to plug it because we would be running a fundraiser and that would be conflicting interests. So that's a great question though, and that's the reason why we can't, but that was a good idea. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $50 donation from Tel Med, who says, I just returned from a month in Vietnam. What did I miss?
Good morning, Vietnam. Well, welcome back. I hope you had fun in Vietnam, and you didn't really miss much. Rather than tens of thousands of Russians getting killed, you didn't miss much because the front lines have hardly moved over the course of a month. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And I wonder where you were in Vietnam. Were you in Ho Chi Minh City, otherwise known as Saigon? Or were you in Hanoi? Or were you somewhere else, like Hue, where a surfing bird comes from? Everybody's heard about the bird. Anyways, with that, we're on to
I'm the biggest bird. I'm the biggest bird.
I knew you were going to do that. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I'm waiting for him to say that goofy stuff, and you did it. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. You got a lot of streams to watch. A whole month? Like, let me think about that. A whole month, we stream like 28 days out of a whole month, and each one's about 3.5 hours long. So 28 times 3.5 is what? 28 times 3.5. You have about 98 hours of stream to watch if you miss a month. So have fun. It's going to be a long time before you catch up again. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops. And also, real quick, he wants you to sing this in a tune. And you know how I am about singing. It simply doesn't work. Also, real quick, Tomed said he was in Ken To and Quinnon.
I think I know where that is. Let's see. Let me zoom in.
And Stop Super Chat was forwarded over to you, by the way.
Got you. So I don't actually know where that is for some reason. I swore I knew where it was. It's not near Plaku. Camp Holloway. It's actually right here. Look, it still exists. It's now an airport. But that's where Camp Holloway was. And that's where Bill served. You know, where you remember that? This is actually where Bill was. And then he crossed the border into Cambodia. Anyways, the CIA is now trying to find my location now that I said that. They're like, wait a minute, what? They're like, hang on. But anyways, let's move on up here. I don't know where that... What's it called again? Where was it?
It's, let's see here. He said Ken, T-H-O, and Quy, like Q-U-Y, N-H-O-N.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is in the Mekong Delta. Like in the middle of it, literally. So it's like in the middle of the swamps and stuff. Well, not really the swamps anymore, but kind of. Interesting. Let's drop down there and take a look at that. Oh, there's really no Street View at all. The Street View doesn't exist in this town. Oh, but it doesn't look that bad. Like, honestly, I always imagined Vietnam to look worse because you always remember Vietnam from the Vietnam War. But this doesn't look that bad at all.
I like it because they all ride around on motorcycles, and I love motorcycles, so that would work for me really well.
Dude, like, East Asia is like motorcycle haven. Like, they love motorcycles in East Asia. Or they're more affordable. Probably more affordable, but...
The only downside is they're probably like moped engines. They don't go very fast.
Oh, yeah, they're all Royal Enfields, you know. They got, like, the 350cc engines or the 500cc's. But, hey, I mean, like, they're still pretty neat. Anyways... That is really cool to hear. And moving on, we've got to get to Psyops. Psyops wants a song. And y'all know I don't sing well. Matthew doesn't sing well either, but out of the two of us, I maybe do it. Oh, worse than John. So, from the halls of Mari... I almost actually sung it as the Marine Corps song. From the halls of Mariupol to the shores of Odessa, we will fight our heroic bad... That doesn't work. With the ghost of Kyiv. I don't think that actually works because I'm trying to like figure out how that works, but
you sound like Barney Fife singing on Andy Griffith.
The United States Marine. I know it's terrible. I'm gonna have to cut it there, Silas. I do thank you so much for the support, but I think I'm going to run away millions and millions of viewers if I keep on. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. I hope that was what you were looking for a little. But I'm about to die from embarrassment here. And also, I don't think I'm getting the lyrics right or something. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And Totally Not Alfarius said, "Don't get the crayon eaters bothered now." They're coming. They're coming to get us. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And Saab said, read the last part. The last part said, also, wait, do you want to read that, Enforcer?
Okay, so I'll just read the whole thing. From the hulls of Mariupol to the shores of Odessa, we will fight our heroic battles with the ghost of Kiev. Ukraine will fight on glory. Ukraine is in the trees. Also, De Oppresso Libre was my father's motto. Guess his group, singing the USMC theme. Reread the line. So with that, I hope that addresses the last part fairly well, and we read it off. Read the line. Reread the line. Damn, this teleprompter's fast. Reread the... Anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Blue Flam 777, who says, may Putler question his every move, may the orcs feel that uncertainty and flinch, and may Putler's generals chase their own tails. May the Ukraine heroes taste Putler tears. But that's a mighty fine sonnet, if I do say so myself.
Yes, it's much better than a haiku. I have peed my pants, help me. That's like a haiku, pretty much. But anyways, thank you so much for the support. And I would have to say, I hope that all those things become true. I don't know how the Russian generals will chase their tails. They're usually tucked in between their legs, so it's really hard to chase something that's already halfway up your ass. But, you know, the Russian generals always never cease to amaze us with their stupidity. I'm sure they will find a way to do it. And also, I hope that the Ukrainian soldiers are able to literally turn on the tap and just get Putin's tears straight from the faucet. I'm sure they'll taste extra salty. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and that was a great sonnet, I would have to say. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Remote Monitoring Systems, and this is their very first super chat, so thank you very much. And I'm sure they've been around for a little while, so I won't insult them by saying, welcome to the Leaf Spring Army again.
I have heard them around, but I swear that's not their first super chat either. Like, I feel like they've sent one in before.
YouTube says it's the first, but you know how that goes.
Yeah, you know, they've gotten it wrong before, but I swear, let us know, because I feel like you have sent one in before, but I don't know. It's saying it's new. I saw that too, but let's hear it.
He says, did you ever send an email to President Zelensky? If so, did you get a reply? And good job, guys. Thanks from Dan.
And thank you so much for the support. I actually didn't end up sending an email to President Zelensky because right after that, I had college assignments and then I forgot about it. But I will make sure to email him again because I'm sure his schedule is clear when we may need him. And maybe he could show up for a little bit. I don't know. That would be cool if he did. I'm telling you, it'd be cool if he did. Not trying to send a message to Zelensky or anything, but show up. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And watch Zelensky, like, have watched this channel, like, a couple of times. Like, it's always interesting to hear who's watching this channel, like a whole Ukrainian unit watching the channel. We never really expect that kind of stuff. And then we hear it and we're like, what? And they've been watching it for months. So watch Zelensky be watching it like in the afternoons, Matthew, and he's like got a burner account in the live chat, and he's like sitting saying so. That'd be actually kind of funny. But with that,
if he was watching and he heard the dad humor that goes on in the stream with him being a former comedian, I'm not sure if he'd ever come on here.
I feel like he would avoid us with a passion. Watch someone pop up and say, "I am President Zelensky." I would definitely hop on, and I'll be like, "Oh my god!" But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And if President Zelensky is watching, please come on our show. Have your office send us an email. And
we'd love to have him.
We would love to have you, even if it's just for like 5 minutes. It would be great to have you on. So with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support, and I hope we answered the question fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Tim F., who says, any opinions on the CA-180 Leopard 1A5 tanks from Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark? Been here since week 1, and keep up the good work. Slava Ukraine.
So I think you're talking about just the Leopard 1A5s in general. I don't think they're that bad, to be honest with you. Leopard 1A5s, there's always a freaking picture from War Thunder in every single tank I pull up. Every one of them. Look, there's a War Thunder picture. I try and make sure that we can avoid that because people always go, oh, you know, the video game. But here's a real Leopard 1A5. I think they're really good. They are not as heavily armored as modern tanks. In fact, they don't have explosive reactive armor or composite armor, but they definitely do have mobility and firepower. That's two things that they certainly do have. So in two areas, they excel well beyond what even some modern tanks can do. In terms of armor, they don't have any, really. Their armor is paper thin and really is only meant to protect against shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons that you would have found back in the 60s and the 70s. So, you know, it's great in some regards, not so great in others, and they have to remember the vulnerabilities inherent in this thing. However, one thing I will say, though, is that compared to a Russian tank we see now, armor doesn't even really matter, because have we ever seen the composite armor in a T-72 or a T-80 save a Russian tank from either side from becoming a Roman candle? I haven't. So I don't really think it matters if there is an overwhelming amount of armor on a vehicle in Ukraine, because the anti-tank weapons being used are at such an exceptional level and so powerful that armor, it may as well not even exist. Hell, even really, with how thin the armor is on a Leopard 1, it may even serve to its advantage. It may cut down on spalling. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. But then again, I could be wrong. These things, because they're paper thin, could probably be damaged or destroyed by really anything, and they'll have to use them carefully, although they will be a vital addition to the Ukrainian armored forces. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we address that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a super chat from Jayburn, who puts in a 20, and also Marion Deemert, who also puts in a 20, and it looks like they didn't leave any comments, but thank you, Jayburn and Marion, very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank y'all so much for the support, both Jayburn and Marion Deemer, for helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all, of course, have been supporting this channel for quite some time, and also the fundraisers. And it means a lot to us that y'all help to keep this thing going. Y'all didn't even leave a comment. Y'all just left support. And so, thank y'all once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. And thank y'all both once again. Also, Microbase Studio said, I feel bad some dude ruined his end. Some dude? You mean some dudes? It's plural. Like, there's been like at least 12 different classified document leaks from nearly every major nation in the world on multiple different vehicles. Like, it's happened so many times. It happened so many times the Department of Defense actually had to come out and confirm that players of War Thunder are not on a government watch list, which makes me think they probably are. Anyways,
sorry, I've said Wiki Thunder because I said earlier it's like the new WikiLeaks. It's like, is WikiLeaks still even around?
I think that I'm not going to pull up on stream because I don't know if YouTube likes that or not. But
yeah, YouTube doesn't like seeing it.
I think they are. But yeah, let me show y'all War Thunder classified documents leak. Like, it's a thing. Like, here we go. Look, August 5th, 2022. War Thunder fans leak classified docs to get more realistic. This was reported on the Washington Post. Like, that's how big of a deal it was. Which one was this one on? Let's see. Back in 2022, it had only happened 3 times. Have thrice posted classified documents related to 3 tanks of British, French, and Chinese origin on an online forum dedicated to the game. The Challenger 2 has had an entire manual released on the forums. The Leclerc has also had an entire manual released on the forums. And then I think the Chinese guy published the armor data on the ZTZ-99, which is highly classified and pretty, and if anyone in the defense industry got a hold of that here in America, we learned everything there was about how effective ZTZ-99's armor was on that one drop of information. The War Thunder is extremely funny, though. I think it's funny because, look at this. Chinese tanks case, data related to what was shared on the forum has been online at least 2018. But that doesn't matter because that guy still went to prison for life in China for treason. So, you know.
It's like they go to prison. What are you in for? I gave classified documents to War Thunder because, you know, I gotta have that realism, man.
Look at this. This one was the most recent one on January 20th of this year. Some guy who worked on the F-16 released F-16 documents.
Oh,
like,
why do these people do that? Do they seriously think they're going to get away with it?
I don't know. I think they get so heated in these arguments on War Thunder, which is just a game, that they go and give up themselves to prison time to win an argument. I think it's the stupidest thing. And War Thunder has been begging people to not send classified documents. Let me go and find the memes, because the memes are... Well, let me...
They're probably like, please don't send any if you don't want to.
Wait a minute, this was a good one. You know in the movie 1984, like the giant televisor screen that tells you stuff?
Yeah.
Do not leak classified documents in the War Thunder forums. That's like War Thunder. But let's see. Players in other games. No, this character needs to be buffed because in this lore wall text, War Thunder players leaks government documents. See, this leaked government document proves that this tank needs to be buffed. Oh my god.
Just when you think you see it all, and then people throw their lives away over a video game.
Also, this one, Matthew. Step 1, join the British Army as a tank commander with now years of training under your belt. Step 2, play War Thunder, a popular MMO featured over 100 vehicles, and realize the data on the Challenger 2 is incorrect. Step 3, find the classified documents. July 2021, the Challenger incident. Oh man, dude, it's the funniest stuff, man. Everyone who plays War Thunder, I'm a person who plays War Thunder. We always die laughing whenever we hear about another documents leak. There's even been one from Russia that happened just like a week ago on the MiG-29, and they went out of their way to get all of the modern advanced details on the MiG-29, the most modern variants that the Russians use, and how effective it is. The problem is, the MiG-29 in War Thunder isn't even the modern version of the MiG-29 that they leaked the documents on. It's an older version called the MiG-29 R13. They sent it out on like the MiG-29S or something like that, which is like another 20 years down the road in War Thunder time. But anyways, we're moving on to the next one. That was a huge rabbit hole, but it's hilarious. Anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from William Allen, who says, in the middle of a war, free speech is thrown out of the window, just as Lincoln. But real quick, before the enforcer answers that, I have to make a big point. I believe martial law was declared when Lincoln was in office during the Civil War. Is that right, enforcer? Want to double check before I start talking about it?
Yes, but before you continue, martial law has also been declared on day 3 of the war in Ukraine, so it's in effect right now.
But that's my point. It's only thrown out because martial law was declared, so it does away with the normal laws. But that doesn't necessarily make it right. Just because they can doesn't mean it's right. But enforcer, what do you think?
I would say that's actually a great point, and I thank you for the support and bringing that up. That's actually a fairly good point, honestly leading me to kind of rethink that, because it is a state of martial law, and Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus, meaning that you could get arrested and just held indefinitely throughout the Civil War for any reason, really, as long as they found it worthy to arrest you. So, yeah, honestly, I'm going to have to say, I don't know. Under that case, I guess it would be acceptable, although it still doesn't seem that right. You can really see where it's coming from a basis of law and the state that the government's in at that point. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Fairly good point, and thank you so much for the support. And that was actually a good enough point that you're making me rethink my stance. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops once again, who says, speaking of the Olympics and why it should be boycotted, look at what the official Olympic salute is. May have been changed, but look at the historical salute.
Official...
I have a feeling I know what it's about to be.
Olympic salute. Oh, man, I know what it probably is. The Olympic salute we don't use anymore because it looked too much... Oh, yeah. It kind of does. It kind of does. Interesting. When was the last time the Olympic salute was used? The Olympic salute has followed out since World War II. This is a resemblance to the Nazi salute that was used by the French team in the opening ceremony of the 1948 Winter Olympics. Probably a force of habit by that point for the French, who had been occupied for nearly 4 years of the war. They were just like, sorry, sorry, wrong time. That was 4 years ago. But anyways, interesting to hear, as considering that was phased out pretty much in World War II. I would say that's not really that big of a deal. That's kind of like the whole, because you see the thing with Sieg Heil, which is another thing that the Nazis used infamously, is that Sieg Heil actually used to be kind of a big thing to say in American football games until World War II, and then the Germans took it and they made it into what they made it into, which made it a bad thing, and then you couldn't use it anymore. Kind of like how also the Germans borrowed the swastika, because the swastika is still used a lot in East Asia and doesn't even mean anything revolving around Nazism or fascism. It's a sign of good luck. And they took it and they made it into their own thing. So now in the West, it's used as an incredibly evil symbol. And based off of what they did under that symbol, it is. But in other places around the world, like East Asia, they don't even have a thought or an idea of it being in that context. This is a totally different context for them. But fairly interesting. I wouldn't hold that against them, though, because that's, in my opinion, really trying to try and dig up something, considering that was 70 or 80 years ago before the Second World War. But still, that is a good point. So with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
Do you remember that episode of Top Gear where Jeremy Clarkson and all three of them were going through India and they came along that shop and saw the helmet with a swastika on it?
Yeah, dude. And, you know, from a British or an American point of view, that looked weird. But over there, that was a good luck thing, a good luck symbol, which is really bizarre. You know, they don't even think about it like we do.
Yeah, it's weird to see it. Like especially apparently they don't think anything about it even after the war, which is kind of weird.
Nah, because you got to remember, in Asia, the people they think are bad are the Japanese, because most people in Southeast Asia never dealt with the Nazis, or the Germans for that matter, in the Second World War. They dealt with the Japanese, so all of their symbols that are very taboo and, you know, considered to be evil will be Japanese symbols, but in the West they'll be German.
Yeah, it's just weird.
You know, kind of like how in America it's funny to joke about kamikazes and bonsai and stuff. Although in East Asia, millions of people were killed in genocides and atrocities by the Japanese, but we really don't view them that way. We view the Germans that way because the Germans were the ones that got deeper into our head as a more evil force. It's kind of weird like that, you know, because we still use I see a lot of people who are really into Japan and World War II Japan and Japanese symbols and stuff every once in a while here in America, and it doesn't even have anywhere close to the taboo that Nazi stuff has, because, you know, we view the Nazis as pure evil, but for some reason the Japanese doing the same thing on the other side of the world in the Second World War is viewed as just whatever. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Max Atur, who puts in a $20 donation and says, listening from Maine, and you guys are awesome. And thank you, Max.
And thank you so much, Max, listening all the way from Maine. From Maine, near the Bar Harbor. Is there a bar in Bar Harbor? Is there? I'm trying to find one.
There's a cafe.
There's a cafe. Bar?
Temporarily closed.
Are they is it a permanent closure? Oh, they're temporarily closed. Like, they're closed probably. They're not coming back.
That food looks good right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm starving right now. It looks really good. And then they got the Balance Rock, just in case you need some balance. Balance, Matthew. Balance. Oh, wow. It really is balancing, though. That's actually kind of cool.
You're talking trash about it, and it's actually a feat of engineering. Look at that.
It's a literal balancing rock. I didn't expect that. I expected it to be like a Plymouth Rock, but also that thing's massive, man.
Dang. Those kids better not throw that rock off balance.
Yeah, they're going to lean back on it. It's going to go falling off. And then the balancing rock's just going to be the level rock. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support. And thank you for being a Lee Spring Army soldier all the way from Maine. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support. And fun fact, did y'all know that back in the day, lobsters were so abundant in the area of New England that it was considered poor people food, and they would feed them to prisoners. Of course, not with the butter and all the garnishings and stuff, but they were just that common. They were considered the roach of the sea, and nowadays we consider them a delicacy. Kind of cool. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, Max, let me know in the chat, just at Enforcer Matt, can you get lobster cheap in Maine? Because I've been told that by a lot of people. You can get lobster pretty cheap there, like just regular meat. I don't know if that's true anymore, though. Probably not, but let me know. But up next, we have a $10 super chat from Kevin Gladman, who says, what do you feel would make NATO say enough is enough, not including crossing the red lines, which is a given? Example, the constant criminal acts on civilians.
Can you reread that one again real quick? Because for some reason, I didn't catch the first part of it.
What do you feel would make NATO say enough is enough, not including crossing the red lines, which is a given? Example, the constant criminal acts on civilians.
Unfortunately, there is nothing that'll make them say enough is enough, because the Russians have already done anything and everything as far as atrocities are concerned, except for nuclear or biological or chemical. So they've practically done anything and everything they could, and it's set a precedent that the West will never go enough is enough unless if it's nuclear, biological, or chemical. And even then, that's yet to have been proven to also be red lines, because those red lines have never been crossed, and hopefully they never will be, to where we have to see whether that is a real red line or a line in the sand. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. I thank you for the support, and I hate that that's the answer, but that seems to be the case at the moment. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Rad Doctor, who says, can you explain why Russians and Ukrainians have changed their armband colors? Russians were red and now white. Ukrainians have used yellow and blue and now are green.
Great question. Interestingly enough, that may have to do with a lack of tape. Because sometimes, you know, of course, having an entire army of hundreds of thousands of people constantly using a certain color of tape, they may run out, so they have to find another distinct tape to use. Because right now, in video footage, we don't see the Ukrainians using exclusively green. We've seen units using yellow, blue, and green, all on every single given day. And we've also seen the Russians using red and white, usually some kind of white cloth or red tape. So it seems that it may be that they had to pick up different colors due to a lack of availability of other colors, and so they had to pick another one that would be an identifier. So I hope that that addresses that question fairly well, because I think the basic thing, it's not like trying to make sure that you're more distinct against Russian forces. It's that there may not be enough yellow tape or green tape or blue tape individually to get everyone blue, green, or yellow, so you just have to have a mix of everything as long as one general color is used in one general area. So with that, we are on to the next one. I thank you so much for the support, and I hope I answered that question fairly well.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Raphael Schneeves, who says, Enforcer, I have a joke for you. Who is the patron saint of hippies?
I don't know. Who is it?
Saint Stephen, because he was stoned to death. Make it clear, I did not come up with this joke. I heard it from a seminarian friend that I have.
Well, I gotta tell you, that is a funny joke. You want to hear a funny joke? What do you call a swimming pool when you're opening it in Australia?
A desert.
No, you named it after the Prime Minister who drowned in the sea. But anyways, thank you so much for the support. What, you don't know about that?
What, is that a real event?
Yeah, like a Prime Minister...
How's that a joke?
a Prime Minister of Australia went swimming in the sea one day and he disappeared. He never came back. No one knows what happened to him. And so the Australians, in his honor, open up a swimming pool, a public one, and they name it after him.
Man, he might have gotten knocked off or something. That's kind of weird.
Did you also know that there was another Australian Prime Minister who crapped his pants in a McDonald's while on TV?
In a Macca's?
In a Macca's, yes.
That's... I guess they served it on a plate after that.
Man, that was some hot shit, I'll tell you. But anyways, and thank you so much for the support and sharing that joke with me. That is a pretty funny, well, kind of funny, kind of dark joke, but still funny in a way. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support. And he's somewhere with Jimmy Hoffa. I saw the Who Dat Dragon say that. I was like, I gotta say it. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 $10 super chat from Gramer, who says, with Russia's significantly high losses of tanks, etc., what type of large offensive will Russia be able to mount other than a wall of troops and skid steers?
Good question. I don't really know what they would be able to mount because they've run out of supplies in every single category, and we don't know what they could be pulling out of their rear ends anymore to try and equip troops with. They've already gotten down to T-62Ms. Well, you don't even know what they're getting for armored personnel carriers anymore. It could be anything, and they're making new ones that look like Comsolets or Cosmolets that are just bigger. So I've really got to be honest with you. I would be drawing a blank here to know what they would be equipping them with, and that's why I think that this upcoming attack, I don't really know if it's going to happen because they just don't have enough supplies to make it happen. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that question fairly well because it's a great one. I really don't know what they'd be equipping them with either. And so with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
And the next one we have is from CK Bold, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, take a question from the live chat. And in honor of CK Bold's generous donation, and thank you for that support.
It was really bold.
The live chat, that was bold, CK. But anyway, that didn't go anywhere. It was supposed to be a joke, but I didn't know where I was going with it. But the live chat question in honor of CK Bold goes to, let's see here, DL Hemingway, who says, is this looking like this will be Russia's Fredericksburg?
Russia's Fredericksburg.
I think that's in reference to Bakhmut.
Yes, I would say yes. I would agree with you because they're taking massive losses and it's going to make the victory meaningless due to the amount of losses that they took. In fact, it was more of a defeat because of the losses alone. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. Really smart one. Really, really smart one. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. That was a smart one. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And the next one goes to Susan Reichel, who puts in a $10 donation and says, I would like your take on the Boeing MQ-28 Ghost Bat drone.
The Boeing MQ-27 Ghost Bat drone. Oh, Infierno. Oh man, this thing is ghostly. Just look at that.
They don't want us talking about the Bat drone.
The Batmobile. Just the Bat, the Ghost
Like
Bat.
the conspiracy theorists always say, they don't want us doing that. It's like, who's they?
Yeah,
I don't know, but it's they.
You know, I always love it. They don't want you to know about this, and then there's a Wikipedia article on it. That's what they say. You know, it's like, well, why in the world there be a Wikipedia article on it? Because they don't want you to think you can't talk about it. It's like you're like, you know. Anyways, that thing looks sick. And let's see some stats. Its introduction is planned for next year or the year after, and its primary user will be the Royal Australian Air Force alone right now, with only 2 of them built. It's a stealth, multi-role, unarmed aerial vehicle. It's designed as a force multiplier aircraft. That means that 2 + 2, 2 times 2 equals 4, or 2 + 2 equals 4. As a force multiplier aircraft capable of flying alongside manned aircraft for support and performing autonomous missions independently using artificial intelligence. Let's see here. So we don't really get a lot of stats about it or information. But it appears that in August 2022, it was revealed by the United States Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, that preliminary discussion was being held into purchasing the MQ-28 for the United States service. Interesting. Well, we'll have to keep this thing in mind. I think it's neat, but we don't have enough stats to really say if it's a humdinger of a drone or whether it's just another one in the rough. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. It looks cool, I'll give it that, but we don't know a lot about it beyond that, and it doesn't seem there's a lot about there for us to learn on it. So with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for support and sharing this cool ghost bat with us. I gotta say, absolutely batty, but is that a ghost? Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. But, you know, when I hear, like, words like force multiplier, like, it like, turns my brain upside down. It's like, could we have not used another word for force multiplier? What does that even mean?
I don't know. I hate terms like that. Like, it effectively dispatches the enemy. Why not just say it kills the enemy? This thing will kill them. You know, it's like why in the world we always got to use these fancy terms and words? And sometimes they just sound stupid. They don't even sound fancy. They just sound clinical or removed. Force multiplier. You know,
when you hear words like force multiplier, you know that price tag is about to be real sweet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And another thing that you know is that the people who wrote that had to be so far up their own rear end that they can't just say things normally. Like, this will help to increase the amount of aircraft the Australian Air Force can have up in the air at the same time. And also, 907 Pike Alaska said, force multiplier is a tool that increases torque. Thank you, 907 Pike Alaska. I would agree with you. Anyways, we're on to the next one. And y'all know I'm not a big fan of large words and terminology because it makes things more difficult to understand. Just use simple words, y'all. Make sure that whenever you say anything, even if it's something within your field and is incredibly advanced, make sure you say it to where a normal layman who is not in your field can understand it. because it makes conversations easier and it makes understanding what's actually going on, at least on a simpler level, easier. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one is going to Egil Anderson, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Good morning from Norway, Jugga Jugga."
Jugga Jugga! And good morning to Norway. And I hope y'all are having a fun time over there, because Norway is a cool place. Did I tell you that, Matthew? Norway's pretty cool. They got mountains, they got fjords. Like, look at this fjord, man. Look at this thing. It's crazy.
Isn't this where the Legos come from?
No, they come from Denmark. But look at this fjord, man. That is a fjord.
That is a nice fjord.
Yeah, that's a nice fjord. I would take you to Copenhagen, though, and show you where the Legos are made.
Nah, I don't smoke.
Well, no, man, it's dip, man. You don't smoke dip.
I don't know. I've never used it.
Well,
if I knew what it meant like you, I'd be concerned.
Well, man, what the hell is that supposed to mean? What the... Dude, I just turned into, what's his name? His dad on Seinfeld, George's dad. What the hell does that even mean? You know, like he said that, and then Elaine and him like started beating the hell out of each other. But here's Copenhagen. This is where the Legos come from. You can see like the Lego inspiration all around. They built a town.
You know, Lego means play well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I knew that. Also,
Oh,
man,
an espresso house.
Espresso house. It's a house.
It literally just says espresso house, and it has a bean on the sign. You know it must be bussin'.
Oh, you know that thing's got to be good. It says coffee bar. You get alcoholic coffees in this place. But I'm just kidding you. But anyways, I thank you so much for the support to our Lee Spring Army in Norway. And it's great to know that y'all are watching this and waking up in the morning and hopefully getting a good laugh and getting ready for the day. Also, another cool thing is that the coffee house, like we saw in Denmark, it comes from Vienna and it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage. I don't think it's a site, but it's UNESCO World Heritage. Because they originated here and it's a special kind of culture. I wonder if I can find one for you real quick to show you, Matthew. Let me type it in. Viennese. I'm spelling it all wrong.
Viennese.
Oh no. Let's see here. Viennese. Let's go down here. Here's a Viennese coffee house. This is what they look like.
Oh, wow. That is top notch.
Yeah, interestingly enough, these coffee houses are the entire reason that Marxism and nationalism would take off. They took off in coffee houses like these, which is...
It says it forces you to talk with strangers.
It kind of does. Back in the day, it was the place to go to mingle and talk to people. And it was considered high class because you weren't drinking booze, you were drinking coffee instead. So, you know, you stimulated the mind and thought of things and read newspapers in here and stuff. But they're very nice. They're top notch. And they were listed as UNESCO heritage sites because they are just so special and unique and a huge cultural factor and a cultural contribution to pretty much Europe as a modern entity. And so with that, we're on to the next one while I use all those massive words to talk about coffee houses. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chris Chituris, who fights the good fight. He puts a $7 donation and says Turkey could use some of them wood stoves made from car rims, funky tees, coolest t-shirts on the streets. Stay frosty, everyone. Life of worth living.
And I thank you so much for the support. Funky tea. Tea of the funky. Flunk it up. But let's moving on from that.
That almost went sideways.
Yeah, I almost said something else. YouTube would have been like, oh, hey, that's not friendly for kids, although you're not a kid-friendly channel. But anyways, what was the first part again? Because I got the t-shirt thing, but I didn't get the first part.
Let's see. Turkey could use some of them wood stoves made from car rims.
Turkey probably could, and maybe we'll see some of those head down. Excuse me. That way. But I don't really know, because they'll probably get the power grid up and running probably within the next week or two. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support. You know, man, yeah, let's just get a good laugh here. Because you know what I just realized?
What's that?
The Tigris River. Let me check to make sure I'm right with this. Oh, yeah, I'm right. I just noticed, Matthew, the Turks have dammed the Tigris and Euphrates rivers at their source, so nobody south gets drinking water if the Turks don't want them to. I just realized that. Do you see this? Like, look up here. there's a dam, boom, a dam, all right on the Euphrates River, stops all the water flow downstream if they want to, limiting, the reservoir can only get so full. And then over here, north of here, there is a little reservoir. Let me go find it again. Oh, where did it go? Dang it. There's one way up here. And I don't know where the dam is on this one. But there was one further down here where they had dammed it up. And everyone south gets screwed. So the Syrians get screwed and the Iraqis get screwed if the Turks decide to screw them over. And I didn't even realize that. And on top of that, they're in the middle of, like, the Kurdistan part of Turkey. So there's, like, ongoing battles happening around the dam while the Turks are generating power from them and making some electricity and also stopping anyone else from getting drinking water further down. So that's actually kind of wild. They do that in India, too, but we're not going to go over that. That's like a whole other rabbit hole for a whole other time. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Chan, who says, how do they determine who operates the new tanks? Only experienced ones, or who?
I don't really know a lot about that kind of hair splitting with the tank operation, so unfortunately I'll have to declare ignorance on that. But if I had to take an assumption, and once again take it with a grain of salt, I would say they're probably going to take less experienced tankers and put them on the tank because they won't be as ingrained in their current training as very experienced veteran tankers are, because Western tanks and Soviet tanks are two totally different machines. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from GNF, who says, I'm a little embarrassed to say, for a time, I thought Czechoslovakia still existed. And why is the UK so adamant about helping Ukraine compared to others?
The UK is very adamant about helping Ukraine well, I wouldn't say they were that adamant over the rest. I would say that Poland is incredibly adamant at the same fervor as Britain, along with France, because they see their European Union, well, not Britain, because they're not a part of the European Union. Poland and France see the European Union being in jeopardy. The United Kingdom sees NATO being in jeopardy, and also Poland and France also see from that lens as well. So that's the reason why they're incredibly fervent in supporting Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again. Also, Matthew, I just saw a certain def say something about a certain thing. And I was wondering, what if we pronounce those kinds of words like the Greeks would? Like instead of saying testicles, we said testicles.
Then they turn it to a philosopher.
Yeah, it's
Testicles once said.
It's the battle in between the philosopher, the intellectual battle between the philosophers, testicles and both of these. But anyways,
oh my God.
So I was about to ask, who's both of these? I'm not even going to say both of these testicles, but with that, we're on to the next one.
Oh my goodness. That one needs to be clipped out. But anyways,
clip it. I want that to come up when I run for president. It's both of these.
Yes.
But with that, we're on to the next
well,
one.
anyways, with that, yes. Up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, this is not a war of territory anymore. This is about the armies trying to wipe the opponent's manpower. I think Russia will likely collapse in the end.
I would say the Russians will most likely collapse in the end. I agree. They just don't have it within themselves to keep this thing running, so I definitely would back that up. They're probably not going to make it until the end, and the manpower situation is getting worse with each passing day. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we're moving on to the next one while John Luke Sills promotes our steel mugs and thermoses. They are great. I hope they are. I hope they are great, and it's good to know that they are. That's neat. And so thank you for plugging that. By the way, we do have a merch store. Go to enforcestore.com, and you can support this channel by getting some of our merch. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to White Lightning 777, who puts in a $5 donation and says, how does the older Leopard 1 compare to a Russian T-72?
The Leopard 1 compares incredibly favorably to a T-72, especially the 1A5, because the 1A5 has both thermals and night vision. I was able to confirm that later on. They do have thermals and night vision, which is the exact same thing that the T-72s have, and from what we know, they are of an equal grade or a higher grade than the T-72, just by a small amount, though. If there is a improvement, it's marginal. But that still gives them a level plane and an ability to hit Russian tanks, especially considering that Russian tanks are largely unaware of their surroundings. The Leopard 1, due to its increased maneuverability both in the forward and reverse gears, and also its very competent firepower, can take on a T-72 and take it out with ease. However, modern iterations of the tank, like the T-80 BVM or the T-72 B3, may be more difficult to take on because they do have a little bit of additional armor and supposedly improved optics and night vision that'll probably put them on par or slightly outclass the Leopard 1A5, but we don't really know that for certain. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much, White Lightning 777, for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one is from Anthony Bestwick, who puts in a $5 donation and says, anyone that's been paying attention already know what's planned for day 365. Also, UK in talks to buy back 450 Challenger 1 from Jordan to send to Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. I think we may have you all surprised. I don't think y'all know what's going to be happening. And also, I don't think any of y'all know about the prize. Said too much? Anyways, moving on from that. Also great to hear that the British will be buying back some Challenger 1s from Jordan. Hopefully they'll get those back. They'll be able to send them to Ukraine. Free of charge. But the Ukrainians have to win the war. That's the only thing that it cost them. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Madison Music Teacher, who says, my last name is Lay, so I'm the one they always ask. It's exhausting, but if you need to ask, go ahead.
I don't know what we would ask. Like, all right, so what are we supposed to be asking? Like, I don't know what we're supposed to be, like, Lay? Like, it's a last... I don't know what the question would be.
Are you a shareholder of the Lay's Potato Chip Company?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are you? We'll have to ask our philosophers Bophides and Testicles if... I can't get over that. Oh, man. Let me go find some other words. Words that end with lace. LES. So,
he says, layman.
Oh, layman. I wouldn't have ever thought that. I was completely lost as to what we were really supposed to be asking there, Madison Music Teacher. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well, because I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of layman. Maddie and me were on Lay's potato chips, and that tells you how hungry we are, because we are starving. And like that Anton Ego guy said, we're hungry for more. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, and also sharing that with us.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, the entire family, who says, oh, yes. Definitely can't read that off. But thank you so much, the entire family. And I don't know which one of you, Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, or Frank, has the dirty mind, but one of you is thinking in the gutter. But thank you very much for the support. And up next, we have a $2 donation from Dark Warrior 137 once again, who says, here's for 5 Bombcats in one day, and question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for congratulating us for getting the 5 Bobcats. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. And let's get a question from the live chat, Mandy. But real quick, before we do, I have to give a huge shout out to the Greek hero, Non-Combustibles, for this night's show. Non-Combustibles is a great Greek hero, and I hope you understand what that's really supposed to be. So let's get the live chat.
And the live chat goes to JP's RCs, who says, what do you think of the Russians trying to bring back Stalingrad lifestyle back?
I think that's a really stupid thing to do, especially considering the context of the battle. Nobody in history has looked upon that favorably, but now the Russians are going to try and look upon it favorably. Like, even with the Russians winning, even then, like after Stalin died, for the rest of Soviet history, they're like, we won, but at a very high cost. And now they're going to act like, we won, it was great, it was wonderful, we loved it. And it was terrible. The whole thing was terrible. I think that's a stupid thing to do. So with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that answers the question fairly well. And I think this is, are you kidding me? That would be the Soviet thing to do, wouldn't it, Matthew? The tractor factory in the Second World War that was inside of Stalingrad was right here. And when I zoomed down, I was like, oh, they must have torn down the tractor factory and made apartment buildings. Nope. The tractor factory was just rebuilt, and it's still there to this day.
Oh.
Wow.
What's the significance of that?
Dude, the tractor factory was where almost everyone died. Like, the tractor factory was like the deadliest part of the city. And like, instead of, you know, being like, man, we're going to create a huge monument here, instead of here, for what occurred within the tractor factory, instead they went, nah, just bulldoze the building with all the bodies, we'll rebuild the thing from the ground up and build tractors here again. So, yeah, kind of like what they did in Mariupol. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Crafty Appy, who apparently is our first super chat. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just smacked my head on something. Go ahead.
Oh, anyway, it's apparently Crafty Appy's first super chat. So thank you very much for the support. And Crafty says, just want to high five the Enforcer guys. I've been watching for 4 months. Your commitment to no ads, aka profit hunting, to constant integrity, transparency, and hard work, juggling college outclass other channels. And thank you so much, Crafty. We do appreciate it. It's very high praise.
And thank you so much, Crafty, for the support there. And also for the kind words as well, because I try and go out my way to make sure that we are not wringing, or as they say, bleeding the turnip dry. Because I hate whenever people run ads on stuff. I just hate it. And I really hate the idea of doing it, especially with this war, because it makes the entire channel seem profit driven. It's not doing it for the hell of it or the niceness of it anymore. And if people want to support us, they can. At that point, it's like, if you want this information, you have to pay. They're kind of like other channels that have snubbed us, and then they do like member only chats where you have to pay to be in the live chat. I also find
Call them out.
Yeah,
call them out.
Call them out. Call them out. I find that to be really deplorable, especially when you're talking about thousands of people getting killed in a war almost every day now, and then you sit there and go, by the way, if you want to talk about this, you have to pay. I think that I think that right there is also something that is just not great. And I'm glad that we're not like that. I'm glad that I have the ability to not be like that, unlike others who, you know, hear the sound of clinging change and then just go running to it. That's not the point of us running this channel. While, of course, we have to be supported to keep this thing running, I never want that to be our primary focus. That's why we've never introduced memberships. That's why we've never introduced ads on any of our streams, unless they content ID. Then we can't control that. They're forcefully the ads are forcefully turned on, and then someone else is making the AdSense off of that. We try our best to make sure that we never sit there and profit hunt, like you say, and we always try and be we try and have as much integrity and transparency as we can. And when we get things wrong, I'm pretty happy that almost every time on stream we've been able to correct it then. Sometimes though, I think once it went without correction on one stream, but we corrected it the next day. But it's good to know that we've been able to keep that running, and I'm highly honored that you say we outclass other channels, because we always try our best to make sure that we do, and I'm glad that we've met that standard in your mind. I almost sound like a customer service associate right now, but y'all don't know how much say what?
I gotta say, I'm very glad that we have kept to that standard and kept integrity. And also, if you want to learn about having integrity, we do have a course called enforcercourses.com. No, not really.
Yeah, pay $50 for a special Discord, and you'll get on there, and you'll be able to vie for my love, or whatever the hell I was. Well, yeah, something like that. But still, I got to thank you for that. And also, someone said, man, Enforcer's shooting HIMARS tonight. I really am, because whenever that comes up about how we keep integrity, it's not hard for us to do it. I've never had a question in my life running this channel over a year as to whether I should introduce memberships or start making people pay to be in the live chat. I've never had a question about it, because I'm like, that's just wrong. You know, and it doesn't seem right. And we never have even thought about going in that direction or done anything like that. And then we've watched other channels do stuff like that. There's some great ones out there, I will say. Like, Ukraine Matters is a great channel. He's, like, on the same caliber as us. In my opinion, he's very good. He makes great content. And his are video format. Usually when you do videos instead of live streams, you have to turn the ads on, and we turn the ads on whenever we make a video because YouTube is very stringent about promoting videos. If they do not have ads on them, they won't promote them where people actually get notified that they were ever put up. So we have to run ads on them, and then it's like, why? You know, why not just promote it without an ad on it? But then they make you do that, so that's kind of annoying. But moving on from that, it's great to know that there are some other people out there who do like us and don't try and do anything like that, because I find it to be really kind of deplorable and greedy looking. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the high praise.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, steak. If it ain't bleeding, I ain't eating. Slav LSA.
Dang,
man. What the hell?
What are you, Liver King? What the hell? Is he gonna start
I'm natty, bro. I'm natty.
Looking
Eat
all
liver.
Looking all swollen and red, and they're I'm natty. It's like, no, you're not. No,
I cannot believe people fell for that. The guy's going around eating raw liver. That guy was like a walking scam. You could tell by just looking at him.
I mean, I don't know. Listen, here's my rule. If your pecs are so big that they almost look like breasts, you're obviously not natty. You're taking steroids somewhere. And I'm not a lifter or anything. You know, I'm not really that much into gym stuff because I don't really have time, and I never really did it anyways when I had time. But you can tell someone who has naturally gained their muscles at someone who's been on steroids. I mean, the guy looked like Arnold, and Arnold was a really cool guy, but he did steroids. You know, it's not a hidden thing. He did them. And he looks like him. It's just like, how in the world could people not tell? But anyways, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. Also, OZ Jeff Gray brought up Perun. He said fact-based. I've watched Perun a little bit. He makes really long-length videos, kind of like I make long-length streams, so I haven't been able to watch a lot of them, but he makes great stuff. It's like a PowerPoint format, and you know, that just gave me an idea, Matthew. We're going to work on the idea I'm thinking of. Can't say it here, but with that, we're on to the next one. And also, thank you for bringing that up, because you just made my brain spark for an idea. And with that, on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jesus UCSB, who says, Viva Mexico and Slava Ukraine. Shh.
Viva Mexico. And also, thank you so much for the support. And Mexico is a pretty interesting country with a pretty interesting history, too, all the way from its origins as New Spain. I guess you could say, like, in its modern context, New Spain, all the way up to what it is today, which is Mexico. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for being a Lee Spring Army soldier all the way from Mexico. And I'm wondering, where are you from? Are you from south of Mexico, or are you from the north of Mexico, like Chihuahua? And so with that, we're on to the... Did you know that there's actually a province called Chihuahua?
I did, actually. You know, it's named after, or the dog's named after that province.
Yeah, because the dog came from the province. Well, supposedly it came from the province, but no one really knows. Like, for sure. They just kind of guess. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Who Dat Dragon, who says, reward for Barney fifing your way through that song.
I tried my best.
Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling.
Oh, my Juanita, my Juanita. Your voice is so sweet. But thank you so much for the support. And yeah, I can't sing. If y'all can't tell, I cannot sing. I can do voices of many differing varieties. But one thing I can't do is I can't do songs. I just can't sing. It's impossible. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying the Barney fifing through it. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Billy Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank once again, who says, I like my BMPs burned to a crisp, to a cinder. In fact, I want them charcoaled and very, very, very carcinogenic. Muhaha. Also, Matthew tried to read my last one in a way that Andrew gets what I'm getting at. Like, do you see that?
I see it, but I don't know what it means.
I don't think we can read that one off without saying exactly what it means, and that would be, I guess, less than PG.
It would.
I don't know. I don't know how to say it.
It would be less than PG, but I get what you're saying now. I understand it now. I don't think we can read that, but we do get what you're saying, the whole family. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. We can read that. And it's good to know that you like your BMPs charcoal. And with that, we're moving on to the next one. And also, Scott KC2CAD said, I'm running an ad blocker. Works great at the Enforcer. A lot of people say that whenever I bring up the ad-free thing. The thing is, though, I don't use an ad blocker. I don't think a lot of people use an ad blocker that I have heard of. And I don't want to run ads because that means that the people who don't have ad blockers have to watch them. And then they're getting screwed. And I wouldn't want to do that. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dubsy Dabster. And thank you very much, Dubsy, for that very, very, very consistent support as always, and we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Epic Trains Canada, who is apparently their first time super chatting, who says, Slava Ukraine, and take one from the live chat.
1 second. I have to find this person. They are a train spotter, and they look at trains in Canada. They actually have like a channel, and they've actually put up videos. Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that.
Have you ever seen a Union Pacific SD90? Is my question to Epic Trains Canada.
Matthew and me actually had an argument about that train that he's got. It's an old Lionel that we got when we were kids. It's a Union Pacific SD90. For some reason, I swore it was something else. I forgot what it was. But he's right, it's an SD90, and I was totally wrong for some reason. I'm like the huge train nerd, too, in between the both of us, if there was one. And I got it wrong. I was like, what the hell? I was like, I need to brush up on that. My favorite North American locomotive is the GE AC 4400 CW. I think it's probably the best looking one, in my opinion. Like these right here.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a Union Pacific one that's kind of old.
That's what you thought my model was, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I did think it was, because I didn't see that the windscreens were shaped a little differently, and the forward nose was shaped differently as well. And there's a Union Pacific one. You see these a lot in the South, and they're just really common, and I think they look neat. So that's
a CSX, though.
Yeah, that's a CSX, but it's still a GE AC 4400.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it doesn't...
You said Union Pacific.
Well, yeah, but let's see. Here's a Union Pacific one. See how you can confuse it, Matthew? Like, except for the forward nose and the windscreens, it's almost the same.
Almost. It's not. The SD90 is more squared off.
Let's pull one up. SD90 locomotive. We're getting into a rabbit hole here like nothing ever before. Like, see, here's the thing that threw me off. I would think of SD90s as having that giant thing on the front, like the weird square angular center of the nose. I think yours has like this rounded nose on it right here.
No, it's squared off.
Really?
I used to have this thing hauling butt around that Lionel track, like with that little like big transformer box it came with.
Man, like, I remember that. Dude, that thing would almost be falling off. Like, yo, look, there it is right there. That's the one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it right there.
How much is it going for these days? Does it say?
That's a Cato, though. Let's pull up a Lionel. Lionel, because that one's like
it might be
HO.
worth something these days.
Lionel SD 90 SD90 Mac. So on the Union Pacific website, one brand new is selling for $649.99.
Dang, just a locomotive?
Mm-hmm, yeah, just a locomotive. So that's actually kind of wild. I mean, that thing's expensive. It looks like one right here is selling for $584.99, and this one is a Rio Grande. Kind of.
So you're telling me this model I've got sitting behind me is worth almost getting up toward $1,000? I would definitely. I think the whole set was like $300 back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like there's been this huge thing in like the model railroading world because I've looked at it a little bit before. Because it's like, what the hell's involved in that? It's incredibly expensive now because. A lot of boomers that have like retired, they have like nothing but money to spend, and they're the largest market share in the model railroad world. So the model railroad companies just keep on raising the price, and they're just straight up gouging people now to buy incredibly small models. They used to be fairly cheap, You know, the hobby used to be fairly cheap to get into. Now you've got to like pay an arm and a leg to get anything. So yeah, they're appreciating greatly in cost, and it's really, honestly, if you want to make money off of something, you could really make money off of model trains, buying them now and waiting 3 years and reselling them, compared to anything else, because they're appreciating more than anything right now. But moving on from that, this is probably my favorite. But anyways, thank you so much for the support. I hope you're a train spotter, so I hope you enjoyed that little side note there. I know that that wasn't what you were asking for, but thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, helping us keep on running, and also, let's get to that live chat.
And the live chat question is going to go to Carmen V, who says, have there been any updates on the drone factory fire in Latvia?
Sadly, we haven't gotten any updates, so I don't know if it was salvageable, or if they're having to rebuild it, or if it was shut down. So with that, I hope we addressed that somewhat well, and thank you so much, Train Spotter, for the support and allowing us to talk about trains for a short while. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
Alrighty. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Carlos, who says, thanks for your hard work.
And thank you, Carlos, for enjoying the hard work. And also, that was your first time supporting, according to YouTube. For some reason, I'm not believing that anymore, because I swear I've seen you around here before supporting Carlos. But if that was, thank you. If it wasn't, then who the hell was the Carlos I remember sending in a super chat? But still, thank you.
Carlos Bracino.
Oh, yeah, it was him. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Carlos, and thank you for being a Lee Spring Army soldier. Also, you don't have to send in a super chat to be an LSA soldier. You just have to be here and say you are one, and then you're one. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Carlos.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Crafty Appy once again, who says, oh, and try to remember to mention during each stream that what you said before, that you guys don't want people to send money if money is tight for them.
Yes, that is true. Thank you for bringing that up. If you are tight on cash, do not ever feel pressured to support this channel. Because we've had viewers come in here before, and they send in like $5, and they're like, I am almost broke, but I'm sending in $5. Do not do that. Do not. I feel like that's like we thank everyone for supporting this channel, but we never want anyone to feel like they're obligated or forced to support us if y'all are stretched for cash. Make sure not to do that. Make sure to save your money. I assure you, we'll be fine, and I want to make sure that y'all are fine as best as we can. So make sure not to support if you're stretched on cash or tight on funds, because you could definitely help yourself out a lot better, like making sure that you can get groceries or rent instead of supporting us, because we'll make it. We'll make it fine, and y'all ought to make sure to take care of yourselves. And so with that, thank you for the support and bringing that up. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Madison Music Teacher once again, who says, in 1917, Germany tried to ally with Mexico versus USA.
Yeah, that didn't work well. No one even knows if that was true or not, because for some reason, the Mexicans said they never received the telegram, and the British were the ones who produced it. So we don't know if the British fabricated that or not. But regardless, we got into the First World War, and we curb stomped the Germans. Like, did you see how quickly that little American guy with a 1903 or a 1917 leveled that German guy? I mean, like, it was unbelievable. We went over there, and we made the whole thing look like a cakewalk. With only 50,000 dead, too, at the end of it. Well, I think it was more like, it was 100,000 total. I think 50,000 died and another 50,000 were wounded. But that was not bad. I mean, like, especially for World War I, we came out of it better than anyone else. And we were only there for a year or two, so that also counts. But anyways, thank you so much for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And that was our last super chat for now. So we're moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code, solved by JP's RCs, Mark Hodges, Cife, and I think that was it tonight. They said the Morse code says the Russians are like lemmings. They die in large and are a huge inconvenience. Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine, Igor.
And thank you so much for the support. And you got the Morse code message correct. They do die like lemmings, and it's a great inconvenience to everyone involved, including them. And so with that, thank you all for deciphering the Morse code message again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question is going to go to, let's see here, Steve Wolf, who says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, what are your thoughts of Russians getting bomb shelters ready at this point?
I think that's kind of like being a little stupid. considering that the Ukrainians don't attack the Russian citizenry, they attack Russian military infrastructure. So I would say that's a little goofy for them to get bomb shelters ready because, you know, if it's a nuclear war, they're already dead. And if it's a conventional bombing, that's not going to happen to them. So with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Joe Taylor, who says, Enforcer, have y'all heard anything about Japan pushing to take back the islands occupied by Russian military?
Why, yes, I have. There is actually two. There's the Kuril Islands up here, which are technically claimed by the Russians, but really nobody lives on them. And you see there's just a series of volcanoes that are largely inactive now. And then there is this big thing, the Sakhalin Island. This used to be partially owned by Japan and the Soviet Union, or the Russian Empire back in the day, and then during the Second World War, the Russians took the whole thing sometime around 1943, if I remember correctly. So they could possibly, they're probably not going to try and get any of them back because they're just piles of rocks in the sea, and there's not even naval bases on them because they're just so small and really unusable. But one day they could. They might, and we have heard about it. Now, Sakhalin Islands would be a little bit bigger, a bigger deal to occur. If that did happen, I think that'd be kind of wild, because that'd be a straight-up war in between Japan and Russia. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137 once again, who says, we have the Soviet leaders to thank for depleting the Russian population to a point they can't just Stalingrad the front lines in modern Ukraine.
And we always have to give a huge thanks to the Russian government, who has always screwed over the Russian people so much that they've screwed themselves over for all time. So with that, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a very important thing to note. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
The next one goes to the entire family, once again. Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, who puts in a 5. And damn, them barbecue grills from Lithuania even had a metal brand tag welded on. Nice. Go back and check if you missed it. Definitely getting one.
And I know there's a second part that's coming in here soon, but I did see the brand logo. That was super cool. I didn't mention it, but I saw it, and that's what really added the over-the-top like level to it. And so with that, thank you for that support. And let's hear the second part.
All right, and the second part, which just came in, is a $2 super chat, who says if they ever sell them later on.
I'm gonna have to agree with you, wink wink, that if they ever do wink wink, I will make sure to buy one as well, because they looked really cool and I'd like to have one. And so with that, thank you so much once again to the whole family for the support, and also talking and lauding about those Lithuanian tire ovens things. And so with that, we are now back to the live chats, and we're going to keep answering them until we reach the halfway point of the hour at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 12:30 local time, as you all can see on my screen. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Frequency Harmonic, who says, Enforcer, do you think the West will ever give Ukraine enough military aid to decisively beat Russia out of Ukraine? If not, any reason for the West to choose that course of action?
The West is giving the Ukrainians as many weapons as they can. It doesn't matter if we gave them thousands, they just don't have enough people in their armed forces or ability to get them ready to go. So we've given them everything we can. We're trying to give them everything we can in that limitation, and they're doing incredibly well. The only way we could really make them decisively win is if we entered the country and we start using our own manpower, weaponry, and such to push them out, and we probably won't do that. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we're back to the Super Chats, because we had another one.
All right, and this one goes to KG, who puts in a $10 donation, and says, I'm so tired of waiting for this nuclear war. Why is Russia stalling?
I'm telling you, every night I lay on my linen, and I sit there and think, when you're rushing for war, there is no time for stalling. Why not just start nuking the whole place? I sat there and got in 3 Russian puns. Figure out which ones they were. But anyways,
Enforcer, don't laugh. Nuclear war's not funny.
Enforcer, dying in a nuclear hellfire is not funny. Okay, what are you going to do
well, if you're
about
gonna die, you might as well laugh through it anyway. What are you gonna do, cry?
What are you gonna do, look at the nuclear hellfire in front of you and sit there and frown? Are you gonna cry a little? Are you gonna piss yourself? What are you gonna do? I'm gonna sit there.
Although if you are laughing when a nuclear bomb's coming your way, you might be a little bit different. You might be a little psychotic.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna laugh about it until it happens, then I'm gonna cry when it happens. But still, hey, what are you supposed to do, you know? But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support. And I gotta agree with you. When you rush it for war, there's no time for stalling. Nuke the thing. Nuke it. So with that, we're on to the next. I'm just kidding. Don't start a nuclear war. But with that, we are on to the next one. And Crafty Appy has got something interesting to say. Let's hear it.
Crafty Appy has something to say for a $20 super chat. And thank you very much for all the support tonight. Crafty says, take one from the chat. And here's a few bucks for the salad and brain food fund. Promise this week to grab a big fruit bowl or assorted deli snacks from Publix on me. Oh, and Crafty Appy, you're talking about the high dollar fruit. That Publix fruit is like $10 a bowl.
Man, that Publix fruit was ordained by the Pope himself with how expensive it costs. I mean, like,
Seriously.
it's expensive. And I got to thank you for that, Crafty Appy. You were really treating us like to some high-end fruits. That stuff comes straight from the provincial areas of the Roman Empire. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And also, you said assorted deli snacks. Oh, that's something I can get behind. Those Italian pinwheels. And the deviled eggs. And the sandwiches. The sandwiches are pretty good too. Don't get those a lot because, you know, just make a sandwich instead. But still, I will think about that. Maybe get one. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Crafty Apps. And also, let's make sure to get that one from the chat because sadly, that's going to be the last live chat we get from the night. So with that, what do we got?
Wait.
Who's the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night? I forgot that part. Oh, we got another super chat, so we'll have to get that one too. But let's get to the live chat.
All right. So this one goes to Christian Crab, who says, Enforcer, I just recently heard of the Mark 310 programmable airburst munitions for the Bushmaster 2. Can you tell us something about it?
Man, I'm going to have to be honest with you, man. We're going to have to take a second one here because I don't want to cheap out. I have no idea about that thing. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell you about it at all, and I feel like having to Google it would take a lot of time, and we're going to start going overtime here. So I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one, but let's get another one so that way we can try and answer one completely.
And the second live chat, second attempt, goes to Sean Winters, who says, Matt, why do you think that Russia gets away with attacking from Belarus and Ukraine isn't allowed or doesn't want to attack them, such as the buildup there right now in Belarus?
We have not been able to see a surefire proof of a buildup in Belarus. However, it is kind of weird that they were allowed to attack there from the first place. The Ukrainians are not attacking the Belarusians or the Russians because it would be an offensive war, and they're fighting a defensive one. They're only trying to protect their sovereignty, and they're not trying to look like a warring offensive party. So that is the main reason why that's the case. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're now moving on to the next one from KG. But real quick, we're actually going to have to put a cutoff on the Super Chats for tonight because I have to make sure to get up early in the morning to go to college. So I have to make sure to get some sleep. So I highly suggest you do not throw in a Super Chat tonight. If you have one you want to throw it in tomorrow because we'll be able to get to it tomorrow. We won't be able to get to any more beyond this point tonight. So please don't throw one in and cuss us out because we don't address it because we won't be able to address it beyond this point. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from KG once again, who says, when the nukes come, I have a 100-year-old scotch and the Cuban cigar party at my place. And let's go, KG. Yeah!
Let's go, KG. He's got that century-old scotch and the Cuban cigars. Dude, they would kill for those on Seinfeld. But Kramer knows the guys.
Go ahead.
Dude, that 100-year-old scotch will clean the paint off of stuff, man. That's just paint thinner.
At least the nuclear missile's coming, so if the scotch doesn't get you, the nuke will.
Yeah. And so with that, thank you so much once again. But we will take you up on that invite to the party at your place if it does happen. I don't know how far away that the drive is, though, because we'll only have about 10 minutes. So if it's further away from us than 10 minutes, we probably won't be at the party for long or at all. But with that, let's get on to the final Super Chat of the night.
All right. And the final Super Chat of the night, also, Polo Joe, real quick. The news has been over for over an hour now. You have to rewind, sadly. But the last one of the night goes to the entire family. Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, who puts in a 5. And says, every time you say, don't send in Super Chats if you're tight on cash, I feel a bit guilty, as I'm more or less completely broke since a few months.
Don't send them in, man. Like, we're fine. We're fine. I promise you, we're totally fine. But I do thank you for it. And it's crazy to hear when people really don't have a lot and they still support this channel. I thank you so much for it, but still, make sure to take care of yourselves first, because I never want y'all to put the channel over yourselves. Make sure to put yourselves first. But still, thank you for the support. Also, Matthew, 2011 Matt's got a laugh out of me. So I get sucked in by the thumbnail and I hear about deli sandwiches. Bye. It's like, it's the question segment, man. We make it clear every night. We make it clear.
And also, they probably need to learn about deli sandwiches. There's a particular section of the deli where they serve up knuckle sandwiches.
Oh, you know what? Let me go get a piece of the textbook page out of another channel that covers the Ukraine war, where I start cussing him out because he said something that I didn't really like, and then act like I have a right to cuss out people who could otherwise not be here tonight. Let me do that real quick, because I'm sure that'll go over well. But anyways, with that. That is the end of tonight's stream on that bombshell. I thank you all so much once again for watching. Of course, it's a high honor to me that so many of y'all have watched this channel tonight and also gotten y'all's news from here. And so, with that, thank you all so much for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. We are talking about deli sandwiches in here during the question segment. Get that clear. We're going to be talking about the bologna, the ham, the pepperoni, the lettuce, the cheese, the bread. We're talking about it all. But make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. We run this stream every single day of the week, except for Mondays. We do take those days off, but you can always count for us to be here every other day of the week. And Philip, Philip, I told you, man.
Out of spite.
He said out of spite. Philip! Why? But anyways, thank you, Philip. But make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, make sure to comment if you're from college, because Matthew, I went out to one of my classes today, and one of them was like, I joined the Discord, and the moderators told me, hey, and I was like, eh, I was like, that's pretty cool. So if you're from college, hello, hope you all enjoyed, and also, if you're from the Lee Spring Army, by and large, hello to you all, and good night. And so with that, good night, take care, good luck, stay safe, and also, Slava Ukraini.
And grain from Ukraine, Slava Ukraine.
Grain from Ukraine, Slava Ukraini.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького